What happens when they've got all the immigrants out of the country? They will do the same thing the SS did in Germany. They'll turn their guns on everybody else.
I just wanted to weigh in on what I think happened and why Trump assembled all those generals and admirals. I think it started in 2020 when Milley finally said enough of this, when Trump held up the Bible upside down, and Milley obviously identified his role as not being part of enforcing the law.
I agree. He later apologized for that, in fact, in the press.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what happened as a result, right after that, and maybe you caught this and maybe not, because most people didn't, Trump then gave a speech talking about why the rank and file likes him and the officer corps doesn't. Mm-hmm. And he said that I'm keeping them out of war. So he was clearly driving a wedge between the officer corps and the rank and file. Now, what happened this week was he assembled those people to see how they would react to his new pitch with his the Department of War, Whiskey Pete, giving his ideas how we should approach the Department of Defense. Trump gets on, met with silence, unlike Fort Bragg with the enlisted people. Mm-hmm. He knows now that he's got a problem with the officer corps and the senior officers. Therefore, there's a purge coming. Yep. Many of them will be forced out. Yep. And the last thing I'm going to mention is the economy right now is perfect for Trump because it's allowing him to go into rural areas to take kids who are coming out of high school who have no job prospects at all because nobody's being hired. There are no job hirings.
Throw them into ICE.
Load up. That's right. That's right.
Yep. And ICE is going to become. And here's the big question in my mind, Brian. Let's say that ICE is now on course to be. I mean, they're in a massive hiring binge right now, $50,000 hiring bonuses and all kinds of stuff. But they're on a path to become the largest single police force in America, much like Hitler's protection detail, the SS, became the largest police force in Germany eventually. It took a couple of years, but it did. And the question in my mind is, the SS initially was participating in getting the people out of Germany or rounding them up anyway and putting them in camps, that they argued were not true Germans. That was the Jews, of course, and the gypsies and queer people, that they're not true Germans. And so Trump is going after people who are not true Americans. What happens when they've got all the immigrants out of the country and we still have 50,000 ICE guys running around with guns looking for something to do? That they will do the same thing the SS did in Germany by right around 1939, 1940. They'll turn their guns on everybody else. And, what do you think?
They, of course, they're going to take an oath to Trump and not to the Constitution. I mean, the one thing that's missing here is that when you joined, I was in the service, I was in the Marine Corps, and you take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, not the president. Teddy Roosevelt talked about that. It's the loyalty is to the country and the Constitution, not the president. Trump wants to change that dynamic, and therefore he's turning this into what he wants in his image and likeness, a police state controlled by him. But at the end of the day, Tom, here's what it comes down to. A third of the country did not vote in the 2024 election. That's how he won, right? And most of those people, I suspect, are suffering from his policies. If they don't get out and vote in the midterms after experiencing the pain of the policies, the beautiful bill and all that, and they don't come out again in 28, I don't know what the future of this country holds, Frank.
Well, this is why they're frantically buying up the media. This is why Larry Ellison and other right-wing billionaires are on the verge of taking control of CNN and TikTok, and they've already got the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times and Fox News and CBS, and I mean, it's just it's a wholesale attack on the truth in America, basically, on reality in America, and whether they will be able to sustain it, I don't know. I mean, right now it seems like the two walls, the two barriers that are holding for democracy are late night comedians, and arguably just all the Democratic Party. I mean, it's like and our generals. Maybe.
Well, that's right. That's
Maybe.
right. They're the last line of defense.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, a friend of mine said, it was a Republican, said, "Are you hoping for a coup d'etat?" And I said, "I have no comment on that." But I said, as far as I'm concerned, I think we're in a position where we're losing our democracy. And the one thing is, when you talk to Republicans, they'll tell you, "Well, it's not a democracy; it's a republic." Of course. It's a democratic republic. You need the people to vote their representatives. It's the demos, the people, the Greek word for people. But they completely dismiss the idea of a democracy because they are a minority party and they know how to rule in the majority by disenfranchising voters and controlling the media, Sinclair Broadcasting and other groups of that nature.
Yeah, I get it. I'm with you. Brian, thank you. Well said. Thank you very much. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
4-hour Thom Hartmann Book Club excerpt today. We're reading from Ed Morales' new book, Fantasy Island, Colonialism, Exploitation, and the Betrayal of Puerto Rico. This is from the first chapter. There was never any doubt that the United States wanted Puerto Rico for its own when it began a war with Spain near the turn of the 20th century. Cuba had been in the throes of independence war with Spain off and on since 1868, and the conflict that began in 1895 seemed ripe for the United States to capitalize on. The sinking of the USS Maine, an American naval ship destroyed by an explosion while moored just outside Havana, fueled American entry into the war. Although there are conflicting theories about the source of the explosion, including the likelihood it was caused by a spontaneous internal fire, William Randolph Hearst's newspaper chain blew up the incident into the perfect catalyst for the United States to enter the conflict. When Theodore Roosevelt entered the fray with his army of Rough Riders, the whole affair came as no surprise to anyone who'd been paying attention to the lust U.S. government leaders and military had long expressed to expand southward and westward. And although the idea of manifest destiny was at the forefront of the political discourse of this period, it's less often observed that the United States' expansionist gaze was saturated with racial language and attitudes, at once desirous of and repelled by Latin America's mestizo mulatto social dynamic. The Haitian Revolution at the end of the 19th century and into the 20th created a U.S. obsession with both Cuba and Puerto Rico because of the potential of a similar black-led revolt on those islands. In 1826, Virginia Senator John Randolph feared that such a revolt would render the southern United States vulnerable to invasion from Cubans in rowboats. For this reason, he objected to the United States participating in the 1826 Panama Congress because American diplomats would have to endure the horror of a U.S. diplomat taking his seat in the Congress, quote, beside the native African, their American descendants, the mixed breeds, the Indians, and the half-breeds without any offense or scandal at so motley a mixture, end quote. The logic driving this perspective underlined not only the importance of slavery to the emergence of capitalism in the 19th century, but also, as Matthew Karp points out, in this vast southern empire, the extent to which slave owners and their elected representatives disproportionately shaped U.S. foreign policy. Going back as far as the Haitian Revolution, fear of a successful slave rebellion in the newly formed United States strongly motivated Southern politicians. As Karp mentions, to that end, Presidents Madison and Monroe, quote, used overwhelming force to destroy black maroon settlements in southern Florida, end quote. Fear of slave rebellions also briefly united the interests of American slaveholders and Cuban elites who wanted independence from Spain, but in the late 19th century, after abolition, Roosevelt's forces fought in conjunction with Afro-Cuban armies against their common Spanish foe. The move to wrest Cuba and Puerto Rico from Spain came just as Spain had finally relented to end slavery as a concession to black rebel Cuban armies that had formed to push for independence. In a further move to placate continued unrest on the island, in November 1897, Spain signed automatic charters for Cuba and Puerto Rico, which gave limited home rule governments to both islands. Puerto Rico would gain full representation in the Cortes, the Spanish parliament, and could veto Spanish commercial treaties unfavorable to them while also retaining the rights to set tariffs on imports and exports. In this way, Puerto Ricans were granted a kind of citizenship that allowed self-government grafted on what was left of their Spanish subjecthood. Yet on July 25th, 1898, 8 days after the first meeting of the newly formed Puerto Rican parliament, U.S. troops arrived in the southern port of Guanica and replaced the Spanish flag with the stars and stripes. This date would be remembered over 50 years later when the United States finally followed through on a project to allow Puerto Ricans to have limited autonomy and self-government. But at the time, it was both the end of Teddy Roosevelt's splendid little war and the beginning of the current quandary over what exactly Puerto Rico's new colonial master would do with the island. Although historians agree that there was no pre-existing plan for designating Puerto Rico's status, there was a general belief that Puerto Rico could be incorporated as a U.S. territory and probably would be. This led many to assume that it would follow a similar path to statehood as former territories like Florida and Louisiana. At the very least, it would, by acceding to military control, receive, quote, the advantages and blessings of enlightened civilization, end quote, as Puerto Rico's first military governor, Nelson A. Miles, declared 3 days after the landing of Guanica. Because Cuba was so militarized during its wars for independence, the United States decided to allow it national sovereignty, thinking it could still exert considerable control over the economy because of existing business interests and a ready-made set of Cuban consumers who were already buying Ford Model Ts. But although Puerto Rico had experienced anti-Spanish uprisings in the mid-19th century, in 1898 they did not have nearly the same level of armed mobilization present. So the United States held on to it, particularly because of its geographic location, which would provide the United States with a stronghold on the easternmost tip of the Caribbean. The book is Fantasy Island by Ed Morales.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, top of the Wednesday to you. A lot going on in the world. By the way, my book signing for The Last American President, the Chicago event is sold out. The LA event will be on October 18th on No King's Day. It's going to be in concert with that. You can get information from our Los Angeles affiliate, kpfk.org, their website. And I'll be in San Diego on the 17th. That also is being done by KNSJ, our San Diego affiliate. The website there is news.knsj.org. That'll be on the 17th. You have to sign up with the stations for all of these things. So, reporting live from our studio bunker in war-torn Portland, Congressman Adam Smith will be with us in just 1 minute for a national town hall meeting, the full hour, taking your calls. 202-808-9925 is the number. In the second hour of our program, my colleague and friend Dean Obeidallah here on SiriusXM's Progress channel, which we're live on right at the moment, just reminded us that Pam Bondi is part of the Epstein cover-up. He's got some thoughts on yesterday's performance. Also, one battle after another. What happens when art refuses to kneel? We'll be talking about that. Also, yesterday's hearing with Pam Bondi, and she was acting like an angry criminal defendant. This is weird. We'll get into that in some depth in the second hour. Also, Texas cops used 83,000 license plate reader cameras across the nation to track an abortion patient on her abuser's tip. But wait, it turns out there's more. It turns out the cop was also an abuser. Yesterday, I told you how one state is trying to pass a law to give women who get an abortion the death sentence. Now we find out about this. Also, as Trump floats the Insurrection Act here in Portland, the biggest threat now is a dance party. Yes, furries dancing in front of the ICE building. That's what we've got, and they've now scheduled the naked bike ride here in Portland, which is going to be next weekend, or this coming weekend. Stay tuned. We have video in the third hour of our program today. But to start, Congressman Adam Smith, the senior Democrat, the head Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, represents the 9th District of Washington State. AdamSmith.house.gov, the website, also his Blue Sky handle, is with us for the entire hour, taking your calls in a National Progressive Town Hall meeting. Congressman Smith, welcome to the program. Welcome back.
Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate the chance. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Before we start, taking calls and all that sort of thing, I'm just, wondering what's on your mind today.
Well, the biggest things on my mind is, how do we stop the Trump presidency? I mean, that's the focus. How do we prevent the worst that he is doing and put ourselves in the best possible position to win the elections in 26 and 28? And I think the current fight over Trump's budget and this shutdown fight is a really good focus on what Trump's priorities are versus what the priorities should be. Certainly focusing on healthcare is one big piece of it, but it's so much more than that. It's this presidency that has violated the law, the Constitution repeatedly, and Congress standing up for its basic principle that there ought to be a legislative branch. I mean, he's violated the law on tariffs, firing hundreds of thousands of federal employees, on freezing various different programs. I think this fight is really important, to draw, a very, very stark contrast and remind people of just how abnormal the Trump presidency is. And really to begin to win that fight, to begin to show people that we have a reasonable alternative to what Trump is doing and that what he is doing is incredibly dangerous and bad for this country.
Governor Pritzker on Monday on Rachel Maddow's program said that he believed that the end game here, the real goal of Trump and Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance and Kristi Noem was to make it okay to militarize our cities, to get us used to having troops in the streets, so that when November of next year comes along, they can use those troops to intimidate people or to shut down voting places or to prevent ballots from being counted, to do the kind of things that apparently he actually tried to do in the fall of 2020 when it was looking like he was losing the election. Do you think there will be an election in 2026? And what are your concerns about that? And let me toss in, Greg Palast, the BBC reporter, was reporting last week on this program that there's a massive purge of voters going on in Virginia right now in preparation for this year's election.
No, I think there will be an election. The risk is, will it be a fair election? And yes, I think there's absolutely the risk of what Governor Pritzker described. Look, back in 2020, when I was chair of the House Armed Services Committee, I was in constant contact with the Department of Defense, then Secretary Esper, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, because in the lead up to 2020, I wanted to make sure that Trump didn't attempt to use the Department of Defense to steal the election. Bottom line. That was a concern. Fortunately, the people at the Pentagon were with me on that. They wanted to uphold the Constitution and make sure that that didn't happen. And now as we head towards 26, Trump is absolutely going to try to, use whatever forces he can to subvert the election. So, yeah, no, we need to be ready for that. And we need to try and make sure that the election doesn't just happen, but it's free and fair. And the other point of this, beyond the military piece is every congressional election cycle, there are close elections. Democrats lost an election seat in Iowa, I think it was in 2020, by 6 votes. All right. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of them that come down to less than 1 percentage point. Well, in the states where Republicans have control, they're absolutely going to try to not certify those elections. So there's going to need to be a legal strategy, a public messaging strategy to fight back against all the things that you're describing. I mean, Trump and the Republicans will absolutely attempt to cheat in the 2026 election. And we got to shine a light on that and fight back.
Sounds like a plan. So shall we pick up some calls?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it. Tom in Media, Pennsylvania. You are on the air with Congressman Adam Smith.
The phone because I know that you are important on this big foreign aid committee, a bipartisan foreign aid committee. And
yeah, I'm the co-chair of the Caucus for Effective Foreign Assistance.
Yes, and I am a very, very big proponent of foreign aid, provided it provides economic and strategic benefit for us. Right now, I mean, we're spending a lot of money on PEPFAR for AIDS, anti-AIDS in Africa. I think that's very important. But Africa absolutely has to have our assistance there. There's going to be countries that are just going to drown in AIDS. However, we also need the rare earth minerals and other things that they have. Don't you think that it would be really good to be much more transactional and do like China does? Condition this important aid on things that we need that would not only benefit us greatly in terms of minerals in concrete agreements, but also strengthen the political support for these foreign aid things, which are also in jeopardy. Don't you think we need to be more transactional?
Thank you.
Yeah. Look, I think it's perfectly okay for us to try to negotiate with countries in Africa to get deals for those rare earth minerals that are so important. Certainly, no, I don't want to do the China model, which is to come in and simply exploit people and not provide actual assistance to them, number one. Number two, I think part of how you get to being able to develop those relationships is to have a partnership. And when Trump, basically ended countless foreign aid programs, food assistance programs, healthcare assistance programs, illegally, by the way, because Congress had approved those, I think it had a devastating impact on our credibility in Africa. If we enter into a partnership with them to provide food assistance, healthcare assistance, and then just pull out of it, I think that's going to undermine any ability for them to want to enter in any kind of contract with us. So I hesitate to embrace the idea that we need to be purely transactional. Part of what gives America influence in the world is the notion that we care about what happens in the rest of the world. After World War II, we had the Marshall Plan. We built Europe. We helped rebuild Japan. We have had robust foreign aid programs to try to help countries. You mentioned the PEPFAR program. That was not transactional. I think it built a ton of goodwill in Africa by working with them. So mostly what I want to see now is us turn back on those foreign aid and foreign assistance programs. And yes, we can cut legitimate business deals with countries in Africa to access rare earth minerals. I think those two things can go together, but I wouldn't threaten to pull one without the other. That would not be my approach.
Congressman Adam Smith is with us, a Democrat representing Washington's 9th District, for the hour, taking your calls. AdamSmith.house.gov, both his website and his Blue Sky handle. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Stick around. We're taking calls with Congressman Adam Smith, a National Progressive Town Hall meeting with Congressman Smith. Stick around. And welcome back. Holly in Washington, D.C. You're on the air with Congressman Smith.
Oh, good morning, gentlemen. Oh, I've been wanting to ask this question for a while. So I'm trying to untangle, and hopefully you can help me with this, how a bill, which is a law, gets passed, and then the budgeting process. Because, they got the bill passed through kind of a budgeting process, reconciliation. But then the budgeting process itself, the opposing party can deny funding it? And where is the final shakeout on that? Because it seems like by not funding it, you're breaking the law.
Are you talking about the big, beautiful?
I know what she's talking about.
Okay, you got it. Okay, great. Thank you.
It's complicated. Now, first of all, we have a yearly budget that goes from October 1 to October 1. But that is the portion of the budget that's considered to be the discretionary portion of the budget. So every year we have to appropriate that money. That's about 30%, a little bit less of the overall budget. 70% of the budget is what's referred to as mandatory programs, mostly Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, but there's a whole bunch of others as well. So when we say right now that the government is shut down, that's not really accurate. First of all, the money keeps coming in, and 70% of it is obligated through Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, a whole bunch of other programs. The discretionary portion of the budget is dependent upon Congress appropriating money. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is there is a thing called reconciliation, which is a legislative vehicle that I forget exactly how it was created, but it allows the Congress to pass a budget bill with a simple majority in the Senate. Most things in the Senate require 60 votes. Reconciliation does not. Now, there are all kinds of bizarre rules around reconciliation, but the bottom line is it has to be budget focused. So what the Republicans passed a few months ago was a reconciliation bill, and it had impacts on the budget. It impacted both the discretionary and the mandatory budget. It had massive cuts in Medicaid, massive cuts in food assistance programs. At the same time, it had massive tax cuts and also an $170 billion increase in the Department of Homeland Security budget and a $150 billion increase in the defense budget. Both of those are part of the discretionary budget. So they can do reconciliation with a simple 50% plus one vote. However, the discretionary budget is still there. And every October 1, if Congress doesn't act, then those things in the discretionary budget, which is 53% defense, and then transportation, education, whole host of other issues, no more money is appropriated for those things. And that's where we're at right now. But that still requires 60 votes in the Senate. Now, the Republicans could come in and change the filibuster rule and say, we're not going to go for 60. We're only going to need 50% plus one. Thus far, they haven't done that. But what that means is, unlike in reconciliation, when they could do it with a simple 50% plus one, for this budget, they need Democratic votes in the Senate. They've got 53 Republicans, which means they need a minimum of 7 Democrats. And that's why this fight is so important. Trump has run roughshod over the federal government. He said he's ignored Democrats. He doesn't want to include us in anything. It is the most partisan, extreme running of the federal government that I have ever witnessed. But now they actually need our votes. Now they need our votes for a small portion of their larger project, but it's all connected. And my position is we should not vote for that. We shouldn't vote for a budget that cuts Medicaid and increases ICE's budget by $170 billion.
Wow.
We should vote for a budget that cuts taxes and increases spending on defense while cutting food security programs.
We're out of time here. Hang on just a second. We're rejoining the commercial stations.
Oh, sorry.
Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So back in 1933, when Franklin Roosevelt became president, we were in the depths of the Great Depression. He raised the top income tax rate on billionaires from 25% to 90%. The ultra-rich were screaming, and here's what he had to say.
A number of my friends who belong in the very high upper bracket have suggested to me on several occasions of late that if I am re-elected president, they will have to move to some other nation because of high taxes here. Now, I will miss them very much.
He just took it right to them, right? Now, what came out of that was the world's largest and fastest growing and first major middle class. We can do this again. We just have to raise taxes on rich people. It's pretty straightforward. There's a whole article about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. 21 minutes past the hour. Congressman Adam Smith with us, taking your calls for the hour. Congressman, I'm sorry to have jumped in during the last break we had. We were rejoining our commercial stations, and then I had to do a live read on the commercial side, so there was a promo on the nonprofit side, which is what you're hearing.
No problem. It's a very complicated question that the caller asked. It's really important. The bottom line is what I was getting to at the end. This is the one part of Trump's plan that absolutely requires Democratic votes, which is why we should say, we're not going to vote for your budget and the way you're running the government. You have to give us something. You have to deal with the problem on health care. I'd also like to see laws passed that rein in Trump's ability to simply violate the law in the way that he has on spending priorities. He's been doing these rescissions whereby even after Congress passes spending, he decides what he's going to spend money on or not. We need to change that. That's why this fight over the budget and the shutdown is so important. It's our opportunity to really draw a contrast between what Trump is trying to do and what we should be doing for this country.
Amen. Ed, in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Adam Smith.
Well, first of all, Congressman, thank you for doing this. My question kind of goes to what you guys were talking to at the beginning of the show, Governor Pritzker, and messaging. It seems to me that Governor Pritzker is almost out there on an island when it comes to warning people about Trump using, the troops to mess with the midterms. And I don't understand why the entire Democratic Party, and the Senate and House, why everybody isn't pounding the table, so to speak, about what Trump's plans are, that his plans are obviously to use the troops to mess with the upcoming midterms. We're well down the path of this now. And
let's get his answer here, Ed. We got it.
Yeah, look, there's a whole bunch of different things about that. First of all, it's not just Pritzker. Gavin Newsom's talked about it. I've talked about it. A lot of different people have talked about it. But the other thing that I want Democrats to appreciate, we are all very concerned about Trump, and we all have firm opinions about the best way to go after him. I think there's a lot of different ways to go after him. I think certainly, expressing the concerns that Governor Pritzker has expressed. But if there are other members who want to focus on health care, who want to focus on the threat from health care, I think that's a fine thing to talk about. You want to focus on the threats to food security programs from the cuts in SNAP. You want to focus on the tariffs, which are being just driving up prices. You want to focus on his energy policy, where he's cutting programs, green energy construction plans, many of which are well down the road, driving up the cost of energy and reducing the energy that we so desperately need in this country. I don't want Democrats to fall into a trap that I see us fall into. And that's where, no, this is what we should be talking about. And since they're not talking about that, it means they don't know what's going on. No, it's a lot of different issues, a lot of different ways to come at this. And we should come at it in a variety of different directions because the people have different opinions. Yeah, there are some people in this country who are really, really worried about what you just said, troops, being used to overturn elections. There's a whole bunch of other people who are like, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. So we can talk about the issues that appeal to a broader group of people. So yeah, I think we should certainly raise that alarm, but don't be so concerned if you see another member of Congress or political leader or governor out there talking about the cuts to Medicaid have just shut down 5 rural hospitals in my state and 5 community health care clinics. That, too, I think, is an effective way to build support for an alternative to what Trump is doing right now.
Brian in Albuquerque, New Mexico, listening on KTRC. Brian, we just have a minute and a half to a hard break here at the bottom of the hour, so a quick question, please.
I'm trying to be pleasure to speak with you. Team Democrat has many fundamental problems, just like a football team. And to improve things, you need to get back to fundamentals and what you're not doing right. And all we hear is how horrible Trump is. But I don't hear any realistic, workable plans for, say, affordable housing, how Americans are going to afford their health care, what we are going to do with this huge immigration mess that's went on for decades, the Democrats ignored, and Trump is now exploiting.
I know we're up against a hard stop here, and I want to say that I completely agree with you. We have to present a reasonable alternative, and we have to acknowledge the things that we have not done well. We did not secure the border. We did not have a solid immigration plan. There's no question about that. We need to tell people what that plan is. Second of all, I think we do have a plan on the economy. We are concerned about economic inequality. We want to improve those programs, and I was one of Tom's comments in the break here about how we need to get more revenue and fund these programs, but also Democrats need to run their governments better. I'm from the Seattle-King County area. We have not run our governments efficiently and effectively. We've been too focused on identity politics and ideology and not enough focused on delivering results for people, on housing, on crime, on homelessness, on drug abuse. We absolutely have to tell people what we're going to do differently and what we're going to do better. And we can't alienate every single Trump voter. We can't say that every single Trump voter is a racist and a bigot. No, they had legitimate concerns about what they saw from Democrats. We have to address those legitimate concerns to present a reasonable alternative. We have to do both. Yes, be critical of what Trump is doing. It's problematic for reasons I said, but then be honest with the American people. Don't dismiss them as racists and bigots and horrible people because they voted for Trump. Address their...
925.
Congressman Adam Smith is with us for the hour, taking your calls. We'll be back in about 5 minutes here after this break at the bottom of the hour. Stay with us. Our book for the Thom Hartmann Book Club today is A Nation Forged by Crisis, A New American History by Jay Sexton. And I'm reading from the introduction. This is page 9. The quest for national security and global power, America's shifting position in the international economy, and fluctuations in immigration have made the United States the nation that it is today. Americans' foreign relations have been conditioned its history not only in their cumulative effects over the long haul, but also as a result of their volatility. In periods of crisis, America's position in the world has lurched in unexpected directions. For as inexorable as the rise of the United States appears in retrospect, there have been contingent moments in which the very existence of our nation was up for grabs. This is the essence of crisis. The world turned upside down, the known replaced by the unknown, panic reigning as people struggle to maintain their balance and shifts in the very ground beneath their feet. It came with a speed and ferocity that left men dazed, New York Times correspondent Elliot Bell wrote of Wall Street's catastrophic collapse in October of 1929. Quote, the market seemed like an insensate thing that was wreaking a wild and pitiless revenge upon those who thought to master it, end quote. Crises are contagious, spreading like viruses from one realm to another. It's not without reason that the word crisis was associated with medical conditions and health scares in the 19th century. Each of the periods under consideration in this book were less a singular crisis than a set of interlinked crises. A political crisis could trigger an economic panic, which in turn could intensify social conflict, and so on. As these pandemics spread through the body politic, crisis itself was normalized, becoming an almost accepted characteristic of an age. Just as foreign crises have spread to the United States, domestic ones have spilled across its borders, unsettling foreign countries and peoples, as well as reconfiguring America's connections to the world. Consider the fateful winter of secession that followed the 1860 election of Abraham Lincoln. The crisis over slavery that divided the Union into warring sections that led to a series of sharp reversals in America's position in the global system. The foreign capital that had rushed into the roaring American economy in the preceding decades suddenly began to flee. Indeed, more capital left the United States in 1860 to 1862 than came into it. Also a once-in-a-century occurrence. One of the world's most valuable commodities and America's largest exports, Southern cotton, was confined to the ports of the Confederacy as a result of Richmond's ill-fated diplomatic strategy, leading to unemployment and social unrest in the British textile town of Lancashire. The most unexpected reversal was how the national security that the United States had attained after the war against Mexico in the 1840s was suddenly imperiled, with European powers encroaching once again upon the Western Hemisphere. Meanwhile, the Confederate emissaries across the Atlantic were in search of alliance with Britain. Our country, Secretary of State William Seward lamented in early 1861, after having expelled all European powers from the continent, now threatened to relapse into an aggravated form of its colonial experience, and like India, Turkey, China, and Italy, become the theater of transatlantic intervention and rapacity. A wider view of American history that looks beyond the nation's borders brings into focus not only the migration patterns, economic flows, and international rivalries that have connected the United States to the world, but also those rare moments in which the very existence of the nation was in question. Perhaps none was more pregnant with implications than the autumn of 1877, when the fate of the Patriots' bid for independence hung in the balance. Having proclaimed their independence to the world the previous 4th of July, their cause had stalled on the battlefield and in the diplomatic courts of the old world. I think the game is pretty near up, Washington privately confessed at year's end. To accomplish their independence is not quite so easy as to declare it, the British philosopher Jeremy Bentham haughtily remarked. But then a series of events forever changed the course of modern history. The stunning Patriot victory at the Battle of Saratoga in October, the drafting of the Articles of Confederation in November that, for all its limitations, further demonstrated the political resolve of the Americans. And most of all, the alliance signed with France in February 1778, which provided the Patriots with the resources, military assistance, and naval power that ultimately tipped the scales in their favor. There are comparable Saratoga moments in other crises in U.S. history, as we shall see. These contingent moments played out in their own distinctive ways, but are joined by a common denominator that has been curiously forgotten in our age of U.S. global power. Foreign states and people have played decisive roles in the critical moments of American history. As we make our way through our own era of global instability, in an unprecedentedly interconnected world, there's perhaps no more important lesson from the past to keep in mind. Crisis may beget crisis, Franklin Roosevelt said, as his administration transitioned from battling the Great Depression to entering the Second World War. But the progress underneath does not wholly halt. It does go forward, end quote. Like so many of Roosevelt's public statements, this one reveals a truth even as it conceals others. The United States came out on the other side of its greatest crises as a stronger and more efficiently organized nation, as Roosevelt suggested. The process of mobilizing resources to counter threats catalyzed innovations in political economy, such as the creation of the national financial system during the Civil War and the economic reforms of the New Deal. The book is A Nation Forged by Crisis.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Congressman Adam Smith, a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, representing Washington's 9th District, is on the air with us for the hour, taking your calls in a National Progressive Town Hall meeting. Susan in Caldwell, Idaho, you are on the air with Congressman Smith.
Thank you. Hello, Congressman.
Hello.
I'm just curious. We will have our election in 2026, but how do you propose that we get the contrary message through our oligarchic media monopolies? And I'm not just talking print. I'm talking the digital and all those algorithm controls. How do you propose to break through? I live in Idaho. I'm in a red bubble, let me tell you. Thank you for in advance.
Yeah, no, I think there's all kinds of challenges that we as Democrats have coming in there. And I think the caller before we broke was really important. I think we're doing a decent job of explaining all the terrible stuff that Trump is doing. But what we need is we need to have a message for what we want to do. And what is the central narrative of being a Democrat? Well, the reason I'm a Democrat is I believe in opportunity and equality for all. And I think that's what progressive politics is supposed to be about. And we have massive concentration of wealth right now, lack of opportunity, and nowhere near the equality that we should have. And we should be very clear on that message, that that's what we want, is we want to focus on working people, on giving them a fairer share of the pie. Now, the second big challenge is the media environment has changed dramatically. When I first started working on campaigns, gosh, over 40 years ago now, it was a very simple media landscape. Now you've got social media, you've got podcasts, you've got thousands of different messaging opportunities. And yes, you correctly described some of the challenges, but also there's opportunities there. I mean, you can do your own YouTube. You can do your own TikTok for that matter. So take advantage of those mediums and get the message out there consistently. And I think we are beginning to do that. I mean, obviously, Tom has a great show, but you have a lot of other podcasts, a lot of other social media, a lot of other messaging opportunities. So I think we can take advantage of that. And one thing I've noticed with them, we can't give in to despair. There's nothing magical about what Trump is doing. We can defeat that. We can present an alternative message. There's nothing holding us down right now that we can't overcome. And I think if we get into that mindset that, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? Look, the guy's only won one election with a plurality, and he's never gotten 50% of the vote. We have an opportunity here. We need to take advantage of the messaging opportunities where we have them and spread that message. But there are all kinds of options. We just need to be out there, and it needs to be a 24/7, 365 fight. You got to be everywhere. You can't just be on, like in the good old days, go on Walter Cronkite. Good old days 60 years ago. No, you've got to be everywhere driving the message. And I think we're beginning to see some of that organization. We need to build on that.
I miss Walter. Michael in Houston, Texas. You're on the air with Congressman Adam Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for taking my call. Congressman Smith, it is very encouraging to hear people, politicians such as you. It does give us hope when we hear things. But I have a question for you. When we out here, all we hear for years now is how the Republican has purged votes. I've seen it here in Houston. But my question to you all, the Democrats, that we need to hear, because it at some point it does get discouraging. What have y'all done to stop them? That's what we want to hear. We hear it all the time about the votes being purged, but we never hear about what is being done to stop them.
Yeah, well, we have fought it. We have fought it everywhere that it's being done. Now, I mean, in places like Texas and Florida, it's difficult. We shine a public light on it. I'll tell you what we've done in states that we control. I'm in Washington State. We have all mail-in voting. We have allowed everyone to vote by mail-in ballot. Oregon has done the same thing. You have seen a dramatic expansion across the country, frankly, even in red states, of people being able to vote by mail. Now, there are efforts to restrict that, but we fought back and won some of those fights. The other thing that we're doing is, even in those states where we don't directly control the electorate, as they purge the rolls, we have various different organizations that go back in and try and reach out to the people who have been purged to get them back on the rolls. We do voter registration drives. I'm not in love with everything that Ken Martin is doing as the DNC chair, but I think his 50-state strategy that we have to be everywhere with both our message and our political organization is the right one. I think we've moved away from that to some degree and concentrated too much in the swing states. Now, we got to be everywhere. We got to be everywhere getting people back on the roll. So I think there is an effort going on. I will agree with you. It needs to be a lot more, and it needs to be more consistent and more driven to get people back on the rolls and to block these efforts to purge them.
CJ in Shreveport, Louisiana. You're on the air with Congressman Smith.
Hey, I was wondering what you think of this that y'all may have been able to do back on January 6th to have stopped a lot of this. Election denialism, of course, would not have been a good thing, but you could have disqualified his electors or challenged his electors based on eligibility denialism, because under the Constitution, he's not eligible to be president. And I'm not talking about the 14th Amendment. I'm talking about the 22nd.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah. CJ, thanks.
And we did challenge that, and the courts ruled against us. I forget the states. I think it was in Colorado, one other state.
Maine was the other one, I think, yeah.
Yeah, well, they raised that argument, and they said, because he's an insurrectionist, he's not eligible to be on the ballot, and we lost that in court. Now, look, I mean, the post-January 6th thing is a great tragedy that the Republican Party didn't stand up to Trump in that moment when they had a chance and push back. But, what's done is done. We got to fight the fight that's in front of us.
William in Seattle, you're on the air with Congressman Smith.
Thank you so much for taking my call. I have a question for Congressman Smith. You actually represent me, and I reached out to your office several times. I received emails, pretty canned responses, to be honest. But my question I keep continuing to want to ask is, what specific action are you taking to end U.S. funding of the genocide, mass starvation in Gaza right now? Like, what action are you taking to actually stop that?
Got it, William. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I said this in a town hall meeting a couple of days ago. I think we should restrict arms sales to Israel right now until they stop the war in Gaza, number one. Number two, rush humanitarian assistance to Gaza. And number three, support an alternative to Hamas as a governing coalition. This is one of the things that Prime Minister Netanyahu has done that has been most problematic. Yes, Hamas is awful, horrible, terrible, and I believe that. And I think Israel has a legitimate concern about what Hamas represents and what they're trying to do. But what Netanyahu has done is he's made it so that there's no alternative to Hamas. He has undermined the Palestinian Authority and every other possible alternative to Hamas. That has to change. That is the way to stop Hamas. More military operations in Gaza are not going to do it. They're just going to extend the civilian misery. So I'm working on a bill right now, which hopefully, well, if we ever get back into session, if Mike Johnson lets us back in, I will introduce that would say no more arms sales to Israel until they meet those criteria. Final criteria is no annexation of any part of what is Palestinian territory right now. Gaza certainly, but also the West Bank. So I put out a statement a couple of months ago to that effect. I've said this publicly in a number of different areas. I think the war in Gaza should stop right now, and I think until it does, we ought to restrict arms sales to Israel. And look, to be honest with you, I support the right of Israel to exist. I support Israel. I recognize the threats they face. But the way they are conducting the war in Gaza right now is something that simply cannot be supported.
Minute and a half to the next break here. Scott in Dayton, Ohio. You're on the air with Congressman Smith.
Good morning, and thank you both for speaking truth to power in your service to America. I just want to throw out a couple quick comments about the upcoming elections and all elections. We need to do two things on the Democratic side. A, we need to teach voters how to go and check their registration to make sure they have not been bumped off the rolls. And B, we need to encourage everybody who can to vote early, to take away the shenanigans of bomb threats of the right-wing poll watchers and any way they can cheat on Election Day. I know it's hard for some people of lesser means to get out there, but we need to educate voters on how they can make this happen. We can beat them in the future.
No, I completely agree. And I think this is what the DNC needs to be doing. A lot of people talk about, well, how come the DNC doesn't have, what their message is terrible. They're not doing this, they're not doing that. Look, it's not the DNC's job really to drive all of that. Elected officials and candidates have to drive that. But what the DNC can do is what that caller just talked about. They can organize district by district, county by county, all across the country, and make sure that voters' rights are protected and that they have the ability to vote and to fight back against these voter suppression efforts that the right wing is focused on. So I think we really need to organize around those principles to make sure we get our vote out.
There you go. 45 minutes past the hour. Congressman Adam Smith is on the line with us, taking your calls for the hour. Hang on just a second here. I just lost my page. AdamSmith.house.gov is both his website and his Blue Sky handle. Check it out. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Representative Smith.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Congressman Adam Smith, a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, taking your calls for the hour in a National Progressive Town Hall meeting right here. Stick around. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Dave in Venice, California, listening on KPFK. You are on the air with Congressman Smith.
Yes, Congressman, welcome. We want to hear from our Democratic representatives. We welcome you to Thom Hartmann. We want to hear from you. And I just wanted to say that I do have a question. What do you feel that this is a provocation? This is all a provocation for the for an excuse for looking for an excuse to keep those troops there all through the elections, or is that something that you are looking at? And
yeah, absolutely. I think it's more fundamental than that. The Trump presidency has been about consolidating power in Donald Trump's hands. Now, you sort of got two people or two groups here that are working on that. Trump just likes power for the sake of power. It's an ego thing for him. But then he's got people around him who believe in sort of an authoritarian executive. Every opportunity they have, this is what the Doge was all about. The Doge was not about government efficiency or effectiveness. It was about weakening the federal government so that Trump would have more power. That's why they randomly fired hundreds of thousands of people, randomly froze programs. It was utter chaos. There was no sort of plan to it. It was just to create chaos and weakness within the broader federal government so that the power would wind up back in Trump's hands. Trump wants control of the military. He wants to be able to use it the way he wants to use it when he wants to use it. And he's deploying it to the U.S. cities as a way to do that. Now, whether or not that's specifically tied to a desire to control the upcoming elections, I think it's broader than that. I think that's certainly part of it. But I think it's more a matter of Trump wanting authoritarian power and to undermine the checks and balances that exist within a representative democracy so that Donald Trump can decide whether or not he wants to send troops to Portland or Memphis or New Orleans or wherever, that he can do that and he can do that alone. And that's why it is such a fundamental threat to our constitutional republic. Trump is acting as a president more like a dictator than he is like a democratically elected president of a constitutional republic. And he's doing that by trying to wipe away any of the checks on his power, including the check on the ability to send U.S. troops to do domestic law enforcement, which is against the law and not supposed to be allowed. He is pressing every possible envelope to give himself more power. Now, what he plans to do with that, well, that varies from member to member around his administration. Certainly, one thing to worry about is whether or not they will use those troops to enforce the election outcomes that they want and block the ones that they don't. But I think it's even broader than that. It's about concentrating power in Trump's hands at the expense of what the Constitution truly envisioned.
Congressman, we just have 20 seconds to the break. Do you think that the Republicans will ever stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, the House and Senate are supposed to have some power too?
Yeah, I hope so. And that's what this shutdown's all about. Look, I mean, if Mike Johnson, do you believe in Congress? Or are you just going to dissolve the whole body and let Trump do whatever he wants to do? I don't know if they're ever going to stand up, but we got to push them as hard as possible to make them do it.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. It's 49 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Adam Smith in 60 seconds. I have to read a commercial over on the commercial side of the program. You'll hear a promo on this side, and we'll be back in 1 minute. Stick around. 49 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann program, defending America from the weapons of mass deception. Congressman Adam Smith with us, adamsmith.house.gov, both the website and the Blue Sky handle. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. America is at a crossroads. In my new book, The Last American President, I reveal how Donald Trump isn't a one-off. He's a product of a decades-long scheme by billionaires and corporate oligarchs to destroy our democracy from within. You'll learn how Trump's psychopath father and also his mentor, Roy Cohn, molded him into a weapon for authoritarianism. How billionaire networks built the machinery that made his presidency inevitable, and how our democracy is dying from an empathy deficit that treats human suffering as acceptable collateral damage for profit. Authoritarianism is not inevitable. We can still reform, resist, and reclaim our democracy if we act now. This isn't about a left or right. It's about democracy versus authoritarianism, about whether government still serves people or billionaires. The stakes couldn't be higher. Learn the truth and find out how you can save our democracy with The Last American President, my new book. More information at hartmanreport.com. Welcome back. Congressman Adam Smith with us, taking your calls. Cynthia in Ann Arbor, Michigan. You're on the air with Congressman Smith.
Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to say that I'm calling about Governor Pritzker and what's going on in Chicago. I think we all know about the crimes and civil violations that are going on there. I want to state one thing, and then I want to ask a question. The Border Patrol's over there. Border Patrol is not supposed to be more than 100 miles from a border. Now, they called, they were saying, well, Lake Michigan's right there. Lake Michigan's the only one of the 5 Great Lakes that is completely encircled by U.S. property. There is no Canadian property, so I don't understand where they're coming from on that. But what can we do to support our governors against the Trump invasion? Is there something the Governors Association can do? And what if this continues? What if the blue feeder states do a soft succession?
Yeah, 2 things. One, we can keep suing, which has been effective. You've got the lawsuit that was effective in Portland, which said, no, there is no emergency. And bless that Trump-appointed judge. Just because there's an emergency clause doesn't mean the president gets to, oh, there was a spilt cup of coffee. There's an emergency. No, you can't just declare an emergency without the facts to back it up. And we've gotten 2 good court rulings. So keep suing and also keep messaging. The American people do not want an authoritarian government. They don't. And they don't want U.S. troops enforcing, doing domestic law enforcement. So I think if we keep messaging about how extreme this is and go after the legal aspects of it, I think that helps. The other thing, my opinion, crime is a problem. Crime is a challenge. I don't think Democrats should say, oh, the crime's down, it's nothing to worry about. That's not the experience of most people. But the way I summed up the reaction to this, crime is a problem. Fascism isn't the answer. The answer is more police and stronger communities. And that's what we ought to advocate for, not using federal troops, whether they're Border Patrol agents or ICE agents or National Guard or active duty. That is an authoritarian approach that no American, right, left, or center, should want to see their rights taken away by the abuse of federal power in that manner.
Amen. Ed, in Belfair, Washington, you are on the air with Congressman Smith.
Thank you for taking my call, Tom. Representative Smith, I was wondering about the subsidies, which I call welfare for the farmers. How is that money going to be distributed from the tariffs? Is it going to go to the small farmer, the 100, 500 acre, 1,000 acre farmer, or is it going to go to the $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 acre farmer? Because I'm making a cross-country trip across from Minnesota back to home base in Washington, and there's farmers going bankrupt right now, the small ones are. I see the big money going to the big farmers, and then they turn around and put that money back in the super PACs for the Republican Party, and that's wrong. Thank you for your thing.
Thank you,
A
Ed.
couple things about that. Number one, farmers don't want a bailout. They want to stop this ridiculous tariff policy and this ridiculous immigration policy that is forcing them into bankruptcy. Trump has created this problem through the tariffs and through the immigration policy that he is implementing. So they don't want a bailout. They want to be able to work and earn a living, which they ought to be able to do. So we ought to change those policies. Second, on the money that Trump is envisioning, it's not legal for Trump to take that tariff money and pass it out to farmers based on his personal whim. Congress has the ability to appropriate that money. So we don't know what Trump is planning on doing. He should not have the authority to do that. I do not trust for 1 second that he would do it intelligently, but he shouldn't even have the authority to do it in the first place. And again, I'll end where I started. Get rid of the tariffs, get rid of the immigration policies so that farmers can actually earn a living the way they want to earn a living. So I think those are the messages that we should hammer home on that. But yeah, you're right to be worried. If this winds up being just Trump taking this tariff money and passing it out where he wants to pass it out, I think we all know what his priorities are going to be, and they are not going to be the priorities that help the working people of this country.
Just a minute and a half to the end of this hour. Jackie in Havre de Grace, Maryland, you are on the air with Congressman Smith.
Pretty good. Thank you. I'm a first-time caller. Thank you for taking my call. Just 2 quick things. One is I haven't heard anybody talk about us doing our own project document, like a Project 2029, Reclaiming Our Democracy, and really pulling in the people to help craft this document along with the experts in the field. So, for example, the leaders of...
let's get Congressman Smith's response.
Actually, people are doing that. There's I forget who it was, but there's specifically someone who is putting together a 2029 project. And that 2029 project ought to be a return to our progressive roots. when you look at how we've changed this country to combat inequality, we've really done it very effectively 3 times. At the turn of the 20th century, when we put in the income tax, we got rid, we did antitrust, the Fair Labor Standards Act, end of child labor, 1930s New Deal, of course, but then the Great Society in the 1960s, Medicare, Medicaid, the Voting Rights Act. There was a public housing bill in there as well. Basic progressive efforts to reform and regulate capitalism in our system has worked. We don't need a revolution. We don't need some, forgive me, communist socialist utopia. We need to use basic progressive principles that we've used in this country repeatedly to get greater equality for the American people. That's the message we need to do, and that's what a Project 2029 thing ought to say. That's what we're going to do. We're going to stand up for the working class in this country, and we're going to bring back equality and concentrated power.
Amen. Congressman, it's great having you with us for the hours. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and keep up the great work.
You as well. Terrific program. Really love what you do. So thanks for giving me a chance to join you today.
Thank you, Congressman.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Thom Hartmann here with Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Unequal Protection, How Corporations Became People and How You Can Fight Back. This is from page 218. The subhead is, If Corporations Are Persons, Why Aren't There Crimes in the Crime Statistics? Every year, the Federal Bureau of Investigation issues a press release on its Uniform Crime Reporting Program, which determines the nation's crime index. It reports crimes by persons, which excludes, strangely enough, corporate persons, even when the corporations have been convicted of felonies. In its entire history, the FBI has never issued a report on crimes by corporate persons, although its reports on crimes by human persons are well-researched and well-publicized. The upshot of this is that when you ask people how most money and property are stolen or how most people are killed, they think of burglars and muggers and bank robbers and crimes of passion. They think of human persons. The reality, though, is that more money and property are stolen by or lost to corporate criminals than to human criminals. Russell Mochaber's corporate crime reporter noted that in 1998, when the FBI estimated robberies and burglaries at almost $4 billion, the cost of corporate crimes was in the hundreds of billions, as it is every year. These include security scams that ran around $15 billion that year, car repair fraud that hit around $40 billion that year, insurance swindles and corporate fraud found on your health insurance, HMO, and hospital billings that runs between $100 and $400 billion a year, 100 times greater than all the burglaries in the country combined. Then there are the occasional really big crimes like Neil Bush's savings and loans scandal that then Attorney General Dick Thornburgh called the biggest white-collar swindle in history, or the actions of banksters and defense contractors that get no investigations whatsoever from either the Bush or the Obama administrations. More people die as a result of corporate activity than because of the actions of deranged killers or overwrought spouses. According to the corporate crime reporter, the FBI reported that 1998 saw about 19,000 Americans murdered at the hands of other people. But that same year, 56,000 people died from work-related diseases like black lung and asbestosis that went unreported by the FBI. And many times that number died from the silent violence of pollution, contaminated food, hazardous consumer products, and hospital malpractice. Much of the human death caused by corporate activity has arguable benefits. For example, the many cancers caused by compounds associated with plastics or pesticides. But the cost of these deaths isn't factored into the unit cost of the products. So there's no financial incentive for industry to develop toxin-free or toxin-reduced alternatives or to use the more expensive but less toxic alternatives that already exist. This is a process known as internalizing profits and externalizing costs. The corporation profits from the toxins, and the public pays for the cancers, both in healthcare costs and lost productivity from sick and dying workers. It's been a standard operating procedure for centuries and was pushed back against for only a few decades in the 1960s and 70s, with the consumer movement that came out of the publication of Rachel Carlson's book Silent Spring and Ralph Nader's book Unsafe at Any Speed. Since the Reagan administration, however, dumping externalities on the public has become a common and accepted practice across the business spectrum. One of the easiest ways to do it is to simply move the toxin-producing or toxin-using factory or process to a country with lax environmental and labor laws like China or Vietnam, so that not only are labor costs lowered, but more importantly, the cost of dealing with externalities like workmen's compensation from injury and exposure and toxic emissions and death in the workplace, so that all those costs drop to zero or close to it. And then there are the big mistakes. In 1998, one of America's largest meatpacking companies replaced a refrigerating unit on one of its processing lines. Shortly thereafter, the detectors it had in place on the line to look for the deadly cold-loving bacteria like Listeria monocytogenes started to react, indicating high levels of bacterial contamination. The company's response was immediate. Carolyn Smith DeWall of the Center for Science and the Public Interest told reporters Russell Mochaber and Robert Weissman, quote, "Then their studies started coming up positive, so they stopped testing. This company's Fourth Amendment right to privacy blocked surprise inspections by the government." They're a person, right? The detectors were apparently turned off for a full month before the Centers for Disease Control frantically tried to find the source of the bacteria that was killing people, mostly children, all over the United States. Used DNA fingerprinting to track the bacteria that was causing the nationwide outbreak of Listeria back to the plant, provoking a nationwide recall of millions of pounds of the product. But during that month, hundreds of people consuming this company's products were sickened by Listeria, and 21 humans died from it. U.S. Attorney's Office, according to Mochaber and Weissman, said, quote, "There was insufficient evidence to bring a felony charge against the company."
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program. On the line with us is our buddy Dean Obeidallah, the host of the Dean Obeidallah Show, weekdays 6 to 9 p.m. right here on Sirius XM Progress Radio Channel 127. He's got an amazing Substack newsletter, which I got my edition yesterday, and it provoked me to say, we got to get Dean on the show and talk about this. It's called the Dean's Report. Go over to Substack.com and just plug in Dean's Report or Dean Obeidallah, Obeidallah, and or just deanobeidallah.substack.com, which is the actual official URL. Dean Obeidallah on Blue Sky and Sirius XM. Well, that's Sirius XM. So, Dean, welcome back. Your newsletter yesterday was just mind-blowing. Pam Bondi just reminded us that she's part of the Jeffrey Epstein cover-up. You know, Eric Swalwell yesterday came out and said that he thinks that Republicans are starting to, the whole Republican wall on behalf of Trump in the House and Senate, or at least in the House, is starting to crack with Marjorie Taylor Greene coming out here and Thomas Massie and Nancy Mace joining together with Democrats, with Ro Khanna to say, hey, wait a minute, we want to see those files. And then the way that she was just lying about this yesterday, what the hell is going on here?
Has about 2,500 likes in less than 12 or 14 hours, which I'm not bragging. I'm stunned by that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad people are sharing it and people are liking it. My point was, first of all, Pam Bondi, without any kind of shading or opinion here, was so defensive, so evasive. And to me, and anyone who's worked in the law, those are what prosecutors call consciousness of guilt. She is being evasive because she is guilty, and not guilty of being involved in the Epstein sex ring, but being involved in the Epstein cover-up. And that's why she lashed out against Democrats. She would not give yes or no answers or straight answers to anything. And even when Republican Senator John Kennedy asked her questions about Howard Lutnick, who the Secretary of Commerce last week said Jeffrey Epstein was the biggest blackmailer ever. That's what he said last week. This is Trump's current Secretary of Commerce. She said she wouldn't answer it directly. It was unbelievable to see this masterclass in guilt. So what we have is a woman who's been engaged in a long-time cover-up for Donald Trump, and finally some people pressed her. And we can talk about it a little bit more going back to when she was AG of Florida. That's when the cover-up began.
Yeah, well, she was AG of Florida for what, 8 years, something like that, and that was during the time that Jeffrey Epstein was raping young girls right there in Florida, right under her nose.
Exactly. From 2011 to 2019, Pam Bondi was the Attorney General of Florida. In that time, as I wrote about in an article a few months ago, that she made prosecuting child sex predators one of her top things. She had numerous press conferences. We arrested these people. We worked with these law enforcement. We got them. She never investigated Jeffrey Epstein. And we know this sex ring was still going on in those years because Trump's own DOJ in 2020, after Epstein killed himself, they did a report on the suicide, but also on Epstein, and talked about that. After he got out of prison in 2008, he went back to his lifestyle and he continued to abuse young girls, children, and women. That's happening right in that state. There's no way she didn't know. She was protecting people in power. One of them was probably Trump. There could have been Democrats as well, let's be blunt, who were involved in the trafficking of women or raping the children. So whoever was involved should be prosecuted. But she's been a long-time activist in Donald Trump's cover-up and Jeffrey Epstein cover-up, and I think that's partly why she got hired for this job as AG.
Right, her and Matt Gaetz before her, when he tried to get Matt Gaetz in there. Matt Gaetz, who himself had been accused of child sex trafficking. I'm curious, you're an attorney, Dean, and you know how prosecutors work, and I take your opinions very, very seriously on this. John Mitchell was Richard Nixon's attorney general. John Mitchell spent months, some of the last months of his life, in prison because of his efforts to cover up Richard Nixon's crime with regard to Watergate. Do you think that Pam Bondi has legal liability here? And might this be one of the reasons why she's participating in these efforts to militarize our cities that Governor Pritzker says are preparation to basically lock down the 2026 elections?
I think that the fact the Supreme Court last year said that the president has absolute immunity for any actions they take, which are enumerated in the Constitution, which simply means spelled out in writing in the Constitution, means he can give her a pardon. He can give everybody, Stephen Miller and everyone, and they know that. So they feel that they have the same shield, that they can do anything they want, that they're above the law. And Donald Trump will 100% pardon them the same way he pardoned the January 6 terrorists who brutally beat up police officers and attacked the Capitol. I think that's what's going on. John Mitchell was not pardoned by Richard Nixon. If Richard Nixon had pardoned him, he would not have gone to jail. Donald Trump will pardon everyone involved in this administration. Are there state crimes she's committed that are not affected by a pardon? A pardon by a president only affects federal crimes, not state. We will see in time if she's committed any state crimes, but they believe that they are just as lawless, just as above the law as Donald Trump. Thank the GOP horrific Supreme Court, which is why in 2028, Democrats must make reforming this corrupt Supreme Court one of the top issues.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. What are your thoughts on Eric Swalwell's opinion that there are cracks now forming in the Republican coalition?
I like Eric Swalwell, but there's only 3 cracks so far. Only 3 Republicans are joined the discharge petition. If a 4th one would have joined, they would have the 218 votes needed to force the vote. And so we're waiting for Speaker Johnson to swear in the daughter of the late member of Congress, who she just won her election in Arizona.
Adelita Grijalva.
He won't swear her in because that gets him the 218. So now he has to shut down his cover. But when the shutdown is over, will he swear her in or will he continue? And also, is this coming attractions of after we win the midterm, of what's going to happen then in terms of not swearing in Democrats who won elections, which is another concern I have. And the lawyers have to be ready for that. I'm sure they will be. I'm not saying anything that's like shocking. We all know where this is going. Trump will try not to allow the swearing in of Democrats who win. He'll say they got elected by fraud and it should be held up because he knows the minute the Democrats get the House, it's impeachment time, it's oversight time. We're going to see Pam Bondi and others dragged before court to the committees under subpoena, and they're going to have to answer questions more directly.
Yeah, and if you think that is out there, consider what Mitch McConnell did with 2 Supreme Court justices.
Look what Donald Trump did in 2020. He tried to overturn an election that Joe Biden won. The courts found nothing in his favor, nothing. And he tried to overturn the election. Donald Trump, and the more Trump does, Tom, that's illegal now, and the more oppressive and the more repressive, the more he has an incentive to stay in power forever. Because he doesn't want to test the idea, can he self-pardon? He doesn't want to test the idea of being tried and prosecuted in state court action, or even by The Hague for international crimes involving migrants in nations like El Salvador, which are signatories.
Or off the coast of Venezuela, yeah.
Right, so for example, Venezuela, off the coast there. If you do research on it, which I did, the ICC says they have jurisdiction off the coast of those countries, and Venezuela is a signator. So Donald Trump, I mean, that's a story, Tom, that deserves so much more coverage. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump is literally, without any evidence, saying these people are narco-terrorists and killing them 2,500 miles from our shoreline. That's not the penalty in America for dealing drugs. You at least get a trial and then you go to jail. You're not like disappeared by a missile like it's a video game. These are real people. We have no idea. And if you read BBC and international publications, they're talking about how lawless the Trump regime is here. And we're in a bubble because corporate media sucks so bad they don't cover that with the robustness that it deserves. It is very frightening what Trump is doing there.
Speaking of lawless, I've been trying to game out what would happen if Pritzker or Kotek, our governor here in Oregon, or Gavin Newsom down in California, were to arrest ICE officers for kidnapping. You know, when they snatch people with just these administrative warrants, these are not, these are not Fourth Amendment warrants. They're not constitutional warrants. Or when they abuse people, when here in Portland there was an 83-year-old couple. They're both 83. He's a Vietnam vet. They were standing on the sidewalk in front of the ICE building. It was completely peaceful. Nobody was doing anything. People were bringing up flowers and putting them on the sidewalk in front of the ICE building. And he had a sign and she had a sign. And this ICE guy comes out and just knocks them both to the ground. She ended up with a concussion. Her head was all broken open and bleeding all over the place. They had to take her to the hospital. Completely unprovoked. Though that's assault. I mean, what? So I'm thinking, okay, so the governor or the mayor of Mayor Wilson of Portland or the chief of police or whatever says, okay, we're going to arrest that guy. Well, first of all, we don't know who he is because he's masked and he doesn't have a name badge on, and he ran back inside the building after he assaulted her. Secondly, if he had been snatched at that moment, what happens? What happens if a dozen ICE guys come out with fully automatic weapons and start pointing them at the Portland police? And what happens if the Portland police shoot back? And then what happens if, Donald Trump says, okay, that's it, now bring in the army? I mean, where does this end? What are your thoughts on the legality and the political and constitutional practicality of governors standing up to lawlessness on the part of this federal agency?
That's too many questions. I'm going to send you a bill for this. This takes a lot of research.
Well, we have a minute and a half to the hard break.
And the big thing is the people who got hurt should file a complaint with the police against ICE officers. If you don't know what it is, you can tell them and they should begin an investigation. There is some immunity for federal officers if doing things consistent with their job, just like the police have certain immunities.
Right, qualified immunity.
So they're going to bump up against each other, but you shouldn't give them a get out of jail free card. Let it be litigated in the court. Let someone be charged. Let them get a lawyer. Let them post bail and let it be tried. And if it gets dismissed, it gets dismissed. If you don't do anything, though, they're going to do more of it. So I think you take individuals in that situation. I think the AG should direct an investigation and begin an investigation in your state. There is certain immunity. There's no doubt about it. But let it be litigated in a court, not just going, well, there's some immunity. We can't do anything. They're not going to change their conduct. Our criminal justice system is predicated on two things. It is punishment and deterrence.
So how do you arrest an ICE officer?
You have the police get an indictment, a grand
jury.
But
how do they don't even know his name?
They have to, they begin, first of all, you sign the
complaint. I mean, this is why the Klan wore hoods, Dean, back in the day, so they wouldn't be accountable.
You can do civil lawsuits against ICE. That's one thing. You do a criminal. They should go to the police and file a complaint. Let the police begin an investigation. They describe where it happened. They describe the assailant in terms of height, weight. All the time, we don't know the identity of criminals. People get mugged every day. We don't know no one goes, my name's Joe Smith. I'm going to punch you in the face. They don't say their name. That's what police work does. You describe the assailant to the police, where it happened, and let the police begin to do their job. And let ICE invoke immunity and let it be litigated. Don't make their life easy. Use every legal means and every legal weapon available to hold them accountable. That's what we must do.
I get it. The great Dean Obeidallah, host of the Dean Obeidallah Show, 6 to 9 p.m. right here on SiriusXM. Thanks, Dean.
Thanks, Tom. Nice seeing you.
Always great having you with us. And check out Dean's newsletter, The Dean's Report. It's free and it's brilliant.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And it's on Substack. 18 minutes past the hour. Back with more of the news of the day and your calls. Stay with us. And welcome back. Claudia in Newport, Oregon. Hey, Claudia, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom, and I'm so glad you're still there. You've got guts, you and Louise. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah,
anyway, yeah, you guys are strong. Anyway, I would love to comment on Dean. I just love him. Whatever, his Substack is great. But I was originally calling about Adam Smith, and thank you so much for getting him on. I was blown away. I expected the same old answers from the politician, blah, 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 right?
He used to be thought of as kind of a moderate Clinton Democrat, but he's really come into his own, I think, recently.
Yes, he's getting it. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene is getting it.
Yes.
So a little bit.
Yeah.
So some people have done it, but this guy is so quick. He's so smart. He is so something. I can't even. I was just blown away, and we need him on our side. I mean, oh my God, I was blown away to know that he was part of the progressive caucus. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
So I'll have to.
He's also part of the New Democrat caucus, which is the old Clinton machine. So, he's got kind of a foot in both worlds, but he's definitely speaking. I mean, we need to go back to our roots and the New Deal and the Great Society. God bless him. I agree with you, Claudia. I'm very impressed by him. Claudia, thank you. Thanks for the call and thanks for pointing that out. Julie in Hillsboro, Oregon. Hey, Julie, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Tom. Thanks for having Adam Smith on today. Mostly calling because we've talked about bailouts for farmers because of the tariffs, and wondering if we do something like that, can we expand a program for other small businesses that are also going bankrupt because of the tariffs?
Well, how about people with student debt? I mean, Joe Biden tried to do a $5 billion end of student debt, and the Republicans were hysterical. I mean, they were pulling their hair out. They were freaking out. They were sobbing in the streets. Oh my God, Republicans were calling into this program going, "That's not fair. I paid my student loans. Why should those?" But hey, of these farmers, most of them vote Republicans, so they're going to get $50 billion.
And I think that's a sore subject for a lot of people that are progressives, like myself. It breaks my heart to think of farms going under.
Yeah.
But do they feel the same for other small businesses that are also going under for the tariffs?
No, on NPR this morning, they were interviewing a woman who runs a tea shop in, it was, I think, maybe Virginia, somewhere on the East Coast. And she gets her tea from India, which has a 50% tariff on it right now. And she's in big trouble. No, they're getting no help at all from this administration.
I just would like to hear from the farmers that there's some interest in other people that are also going bankrupt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it. And I'd like to hear from some of the politicians who are representing these farmers. Although, we also had the caller asking Congressman Smith, are the small farmers going to get any of this $50 billion? And it's
yes.
We just don't know. I mean, they always like to go to their billionaire friends first. I mean, right now they're taxing us with tariffs, and they're cutting taxes for billionaires. It's nuts. Julie, thank you for the call. Great question. Thank you so much. It is 22 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. People in the Rust Belt states know all about tariffs. They know that tariffs kept jobs in the Rust Belt states for centuries, literally, that America was built on tariffs. It's one of the reasons Donald Trump got elected in 2016 was because he talked about tariffs. But for some reason right now, the Harris-Walz campaign, or Democrats in general, are reluctant to talk about tariffs. They call them sales taxes or something like that. They really need to be a little more straightforward because people, particularly in the industrial Midwest, or in the Rust Belt, as we call it now, are not dumb. They know what's going on. They know where we've been and how we got here. And I think it's pretty important to be talking about tariffs and what they are, how they work, and how they can bring manufacturing back home. I wrote a piece about it for Hartmann Report. It's titled, "Why Trump is Wrong and Alexander Hamilton Was Right About Tariffs." And I think you'll find it absolutely fascinating at hartmannreport.com. Check it out.
Chains on the Capitol, storm clouds in the sky, selling out the people with another crooked lie. A bribe in the shadows, a deal in the dark. The nation's on the line while they're lighting the spark. It's a shutdown scam, a pay-to-play plan. Lies on repeat from a desperate man.
25 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So one battle after another is what happens when art refuses to kneel. I mentioned Louise and I went to see this movie over the last weekend, and it's Leonardo DiCaprio and Sean Penn and Benicio del Toro and Regina Hall. It's just a great cast. It's a brilliant movie. And in that movie, I saw some of the people that I knew from the 60s, from when I was in SDS, some of these Weather Underground folks who were, not quite caricatured. I mean, some of the portrayals in the movie were not all that off. But, the conservatives are just hysterical, just absolutely hysterical. The National Review published a piece titled, there will be blood in one battle after another. That said that Anderson, the guy who did the movie, and DiCaprio and Sean Penn and all of them are romanticizing 1960s radicalism. Leo DiCaprio told Reuters News, he said, it's not a film where people are imposing any political beliefs on anyone else. It's a satire on both ends. And it is. I mean, the film sort of in a soft, very subtle way makes fun of both the 60s radicals that I knew, and I was not part of the Weather Underground. I was just in kind of normal SDS. And the right-wing crazies, like the character that's played by Sean Penn in the movie, Mr. Sergeant Lockjaw, or whatever his rank was, Colonel Lockjaw, or, Major or something. I forget his rank, but anyhow, it's just a wild movie. And this contrast, the conservatives seeing chaos, and I think it's remarkable, and I highly recommend it. Meanwhile, J.B. Pritzker says Trump is deploying troops because of his dementia. We'll talk about that after the break, and I'll pick up your calls. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's your media support group for We the People. We'll be right back.
Book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Homewreckers by Aaron Glantz, a Pulitzer Prize finalist. The subtitle is How a Gang of Wall Street Kingpins, Hedge Fund Magnates, Crooked Banks, and Venture Capitalists suckered millions out of their homes and demolished the American dream. It's quite a subtitle. This is from chapter 21, titled Triumph of the Homewreckers. Donald Trump took the oath of office on a chilly Friday morning, delivering an inaugural address that promised an end to the corruption and impotence that had widened America's historic wealth gap. He understood that his victory had been propelled by harnessing the public's rage and envy at having been left behind in the economic recovery, and that he promised that he would not forget it. Evoking FDR's famous Forgotten Man speech from 1932 that promised to prioritize the needs of, quote, the man at the bottom of the economic pyramid, Trump declared, quote, the forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. Politicians had prospered, he said, but jobs had evaporated, factories closed. Quote, the establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little chance to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. This all changes, starting right here and right now, Trump proclaimed, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you. This is your day. This is your celebration. End of quote. The moment, however, belonged not to the great mass of struggling Americans, but to the new president's most ardent supporters, flamboyant businessmen who profited off the pain of the housing bust and were now poised to steer the ship of state for at least the next 4 years. As Trump reached out his hand and swore to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, his close friend and inaugural committee chair, Tom Barack, stood behind him, smiling in a blue scarf and black overcoat. Afterward, Barack and Trump embraced at the U.S. Capitol's inaugural platform. The homewreckers had arrived. Barack didn't take an official position in the Trump administration, reportedly turning down an offer to be White House Chief of Staff, Treasury Secretary, or Ambassador to Mexico. Roger Stone told me he could have had any position he wanted, but working for the government would have meant making a lot less money. I don't think he has the belly for public service, Stone observed. Other homewreckers had no such qualms. If they changed the rules of the game now, they could make more money later. Steve Mnuchin, by now dubbed the foreclosure king by his critics, was confirmed as Treasury Secretary. His top deputy at One West, the bank, Joseph Otting, became the nation's chief bank regulator, the comptroller of the currency. Wilbur Ross, the bankruptcy tycoon who bought Florida's Bank United, became the Commerce Secretary, charged with everything from negotiating trade deals to overseeing the U.S. Census.
Steve Schwartzman, the chairman of Blackstone, became chair of the White House's Strategic and Policy Forum, a group of business leaders who were to meet regularly with Trump. Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Chase was named vice chair. Though the group disbanded over the summer after Trump's statement that bigotry and violence on many sides were responsible for a white nationalist killing a counter-protester in Charlottesville, Virginia, Schwartzman, along with Barack, is said to be among a small group of outsiders, including Sean Hannity, who are put directly through to the president rather than being routed through the normal communications channels. Hannity reportedly chats with Trump nightly. Schwartzman has flown on Air Force One. On February 12, 2017, less than a month into Trump's presidency, while the commander-in-chief was dining with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan at his Mar-a-Lago golf club, Schwartzman threw a massive 70th birthday bash at his Four Winds estate, barely a mile and a half away. This time, neither Donald nor Melania Trump could make it, but daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner did, along with Mnuchin, Ross, and a who's who of high finance and culture, from Henry Kravis, co-founder of the hostile takeover firm Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, to the fashion designer Donatella Versace. The party featured live camels, trapeze artists, fireworks, and a gondolier. Schwartzman's tennis courts were covered with Asian-themed staging. The man who'd hired Patti LaBelle to sing Happy Birthday for his 60th was serenaded by Gwen Stefani on his 70th. After Happy Birthday, the peroxide pop star took a, quote, a quick twirl with the birthday boy around a dance floor constructed inside a two-story tent where acrobats shimmied and jumped, the New York Times reported. Unlike a decade before, when Schwartzman's glorious pre-bust bash sparked condemnation from sources as conservative as the Wall Street Journal, this time the festivities sparked very little blowback. In her story, Bloomberg reporter Amanda Gordon reveled in the comparison with Schwartzman's 60th. There were some differences, though, she wrote. Remember that beautiful fur coat on Melania Trump? It was New York in February on a weeknight. This time, no bundling required, with many folks golfing and swimming all day before a balmy night and fireworks alongside a full moon. Howard Marks, the co-chairman of Oak Tree Capital, a vulture firm that had bought and flipped 3,000 foreclosures, told Gordon, quote, "The world is an uncertain place. A lot of people are unhappy with a lot of other people. There are a lot of things that people are upset about. So it's nice to have an evening where everybody's happy, harmonious, and upbeat." End quote. There was a lot of celebrating to be had. In June, the gang got together for the marriage of Steve Mnuchin and his third wife, actress Louise Linton, almost 2 decades younger than him. And then it continues from there. The book is Homewreckers by Aaron Glantz.
The fight for the soul of the Democratic Party. Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com.
This week's been a war of headlines. One battle after another. And through it all, I keep hearing that art's to blame. But it isn't. It never was.
They send troops into our neighborhoods. They kick down doors in the night. They redraw the maps of freedom and call that justice done right. But a song ain't a weapon, and a movie's not a sin. It's a truth they can't handle that keeps burning in the wind. Art is not the enemy. Authoritarianism is. You can jail a poet, but the words still live. You can ban a story, but the truth still bleeds. Art is not the enemy. authoritarianism is. They fear the brush, the pen, the drum, the voice that dares to rise. They call it chaos, but it's only people opening their eyes. You can take away the spotlight, but not the spark beneath the skin. Every time they try to silence us, the song begins again. Art is not the enemy. Authoritarianism is. You can raid the canvas, but the colors still resist.
Welcome back. So just a final note on this movie, One Battle After Another. Art is not the enemy. And history reminds us that art has always frightened the powerful. I mean, what Jimmy Kimmel was doing was art, too. Uncle Tom's Cabin was banned in the South because, they didn't want to confront slavery. Upton Sinclair's book, The Jungle, about the meat packing operations in, I believe it was New York, might have been Chicago, were smeared by the industrialists for revealing the horrible conditions, the consequence of raw capitalism. Protest music in the 60s, they called Bob Dylan a communist. They said he was unpatriotic. When art tells the truth, power always howls. And today that same pattern is repeating itself. The same right-wing billionaires who are funding outrage over this film, The One Battle After Another, are working to silence teachers. They want to shut up librarians. They want to rewrite history to protect privilege. They're arresting people who protest against them, whether it's standing in front of an ICE facility or whether it's the former director of the FBI or mayors of cities or members of the House of Representatives, members of Congress. They fear a nation that still feels empathy. They fear what happens when the people that they are supposed to serve start asking, hey, what the hell are you guys doing? And that's what One Battle After Another is all about. It's about confronting that power. So check it out. It's just a great movie. Speaking of confronting power, Governor J.B. Pritzker just said that Donald Trump is deploying troops to Chicago because of his dementia and obsessive fixations. One of the things we know is that Trump thinks that Portland's on fire because Fox News played B-roll when he was watching. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe Stephen Miller or the people around him have these clips of the Black Lives Matter protests in Portland 5 years ago. Now, 5 years ago, we did have 3 city blocks here that, there was some serious conflict going on. The city was not on fire. It was nothing close to that, although there were some fires. But, and it was a mess. It was just an absolute mess. And I was on the air saying, stop. This is not the way you win the fight against the Trump administration or against racism or, against people like George Floyd being murdered. This is not how you do it. You don't burn a city down. And in fact, the last time the Insurrection Act was put into place was in 1992 when George Herbert Walker Bush did it, or maybe it was 93, as a result of the riots in Los Angeles, which I think were around Rodney King, if I'm remembering right. So anyhow, J.B. Pritzker, he says, this is a man who's suffering dementia. This is a man who has something stuck in his head. He can't get it out of his head. He doesn't read. He doesn't know anything that's up to date. It's just something in the recesses of his brain that's effectuating to have him call out these states. And then, unfortunately, he has the power of the military and the federal government to do his bidding. He says, but we're not going to go to war between the state of Illinois and the federal government, not taking up arms against the federal government, but we are monitoring everything they are doing, and we are using that monitoring to win in court. And then Donald Trump responds to this morning. He comes out and he says, Chicago mayor should be in jail for failing to protect ICE officers, and Governor Pritzker also. Right. See, you speak out against Donald Trump, and Donald Trump says, you go to jail. James Comey, he was arraigned this morning. He pled not guilty. Mueller, she wrote, is now reporting that he's going to file selective and vindictive prosecution motions to dismiss, and he's going to challenge the legality of Lindsay Halligan, who this runner-up beauty queen who Donald Trump hired to prosecute James Comey because no lawyer in the federal government was willing to do it, or at least in that office. In fact, she couldn't find a lawyer in that office, in that Virginia office to do it. She had to pull somebody in from one of the Carolinas, as I recall. So maybe Comey can actually do some damage here. And did you see Pam Bondi yesterday? I mean, Dean covered this, but I just want to say this was she was rude, she was obscene. This was a violation of the Senate's history and decorum. It's dangerous. Chuck Grassley, who is the head of that committee, should have ordered her to answer the questions of the Democrats, but he didn't. I mean, this is extraordinary, pathetic, horrible, and just a terrible spectacle. Meanwhile, as I said, Eric Swalwell says, okay, that's it. He says, Republican lawman, this is what he said. He says, I've spoken to a lot of House Republicans this week, and they've confided in me that Trump's support is fading. As one told me, the Epstein bomb is about to drop, and no one wants to defend a pedo protector. It's just a matter of time, which is kind of hopeful news, I suppose. So what's on your mind? Frank in Cameron, Arizona. Hey, Frank, what's up?
Hey, man. Love the show, man.
Thank you.
Just wanted to let you know, man, I think people are watching all the spectacles from Trump, and I guess I'd like to know what happens when the government runs out of money from giving money to Venezuela and the farmers and everyone else.
Well,
what happens?
What's happening right now is that air traffic controllers and TSA agents aren't being paid, and so planes are slowing down. We had 6,000 flight delays day before yesterday, and I haven't seen the numbers from yesterday, but they had to be worse. You had several airports that were, badly disrupted. That's going to get a whole lot worse, and it's going to get a whole lot worse really fast because you can't run the country without air traffic controllers, and the air traffic controllers, I mean, they're the ones who stood up against Reagan in 1981, and he just fired them all. Trump is not going to do that. He can't afford to do that. If he fires all of the controllers now, he's got no plan B. And the air traffic control system now is much larger than it was in 1981. So I don't think this is going to last real long. I think the problem that the Republicans have right now is that starting in probably next week, but maybe even this week, you're going to start seeing reports in the news about people who got their insurance premium increase notice because the open enrollment period starts on November 1st, I believe. And so the insurance companies are notifying people of what their new insurance rates are going to be. We haven't gotten ours yet. We have, I believe we have Blue Cross Blue Shield for our people. We haven't gotten our update yet. But when it comes, it's going to be some substantial pressure on the Republicans. They are badly losing this thing. So, Frank, thanks a lot for the call. And thanks for listening to us on SiriusXM. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's 44 and a half minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann program, occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where despair is not an option, as Adam Smith said earlier, quoting Bernie Sanders. We'll be right back. And welcome back, Jim in Pioneer, Ohio. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind today?
Oh, hi. Thanks, Tom. This is just a great asset for the American people. About the 14th Amendment. Mm-hmm. I wish I could have got on earlier. But the 14th Amendment does not say that an insurrectionist like Donald Trump or Jefferson Davis cannot run for the office.
But it says they can't hold the office.
He cannot hold the office.
Right.
Right. And that's what the Anderson decision was about him running for the office, not holding the office. And how can I read Section 3, and he's disqualified. Mm-hmm. No matter how I read it, he's provided aid and comfort.
I agree, and the Supreme Courts of two states said so. But
no, they did not. The Supreme Court did not address.
No, I said the Supreme Courts of two states, Colorado and Maine, said so.
They mentioned Section 5, which puts the ball back in the Congress's court to see that the 14th Amendment is properly executed. And not a single congressperson has stood up to defend their oath to defend the Constitution. What the heck?
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah. Well, it would have been a good question for Adam Smith, although he did get a question like that and said that there was an effort the Supreme Court blew it up.
He said the Supreme Court ruled against him. They did not. They did not even address Section 3.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. I'd have to go back and read that decision, but I'll take your word for it. Jim, thank you. Thanks for the call. Cody in New York City. Hey, Cody, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Hey, I apologize in advance here for sounding the alarm bell, but we have an emergency in our nation, and we need to drop everything and focus on this emergency. And the emergency is this. The number one problem facing us now, is that Trump is building his own private army.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like the SS.
Exactly. It is just like the SS, and he's doing it through ICE, right? This is through ICE. But here's the thing, Tom. If he gets away with this, if he is enabled, if he builds his own private army, that's it. Game over.
Yeah.
There is nothing else anyone can do because he's going to start arresting people and throwing them in detention camps without trial. So he's going to arrest, Adam Schiff.
He already is.
Chuck Schumer. Well, it's going to get a lot worse, right? And then, like J.B. Pritzker said, we're just going to go with the courts. Well, the courts are going to rule that you can't arrest these people, and they're going to release these people, and then Trump's going to kick down the door and arrest the judge, right? He's going to arrest people in the media. It is too late. It is game over. We have to stop this now.
Yeah.
And the way to stop it is for the Democrats, number one, to wake the hell up. But number two is to fold this into the shutdown, is to make this a condition that...
Yeah, Adam Smith suggested that.
That's what he's got to do. You have to defund ICE right now. Otherwise, we are not reopening the government. And Tom, let me just say for you, too, look, you're going to be at the top of this list, right? You're going to get thrown in jail.
I'm already on the list, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to use your platform to save your own skin, to say.
I'm going nowhere, Cody. I'm going to stay here and fight. Cody, thank you for the call. I get it. I totally get it. And it's not something I haven't thought about. 48 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in 1 minute. Stay with us.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Way back in 1964, when Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Republicans started this rant about how the election of 1960, Jock Kennedy stole that election, and there's voter fraud in America. And it became a thing. They started this thing called Operation Eagle Eye. William Rehnquist was running it in Arizona. Trying to intimidate Hispanics and African Americans into not voting, essentially. They've now used this claim that non-citizens are voting, this voter fraud claim, in virtually every red state to make it harder to vote, to purge people off the voting rolls, to make people's votes not counted with their exact signature matches. It's a scam. It's a grift that they've been running for 60 years, and the American media won't call them out on it. There's a whole piece about it called Trump and the GOP's Big Lie 2.0 over at HartmannReport.com. Please check it out. You'll find it fascinating.
Welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour. Picking up your calls here. Tom in Chicago. Hey, Tom, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I like the way you spell your name.
Oh, good. You too?
Yeah, same.
How about that?
Anyway.
Great minds think alike.
So here's... right. So here's my silly question. I'm thinking about the Supreme Court right now. And I'm also thinking about the 2026 election and whether or not that may flow one way or the other. And I'm thinking before that, what if Thomas and Alito say, hey, we're going to step down? And then Donnie gets to appoint 2 new long-time serving Supreme Court justices to keep the court conservative.
Yeah, he'll find a couple of cranks in their 30s, like Amy Coney Barrett.
Right. But in my brain, it's not bad math for them to do something like that.
Right. No, I agree. I don't know I don't know how much influence he has over them. I continue to believe that Trump was able to force Anthony Kennedy to resign to put in Brett Kavanaugh because Kennedy occasionally voted with the liberals because Kennedy's son Justin was the guy who signed off on $1 billion worth of loans to Donald Trump through Deutsche Bank, and a lot of this is very sketchy stuff, some of which seem to be involved with Russian money laundering, at least according to some of the reports. And so, I think that he leaned, my personal opinion, and this is just my opinion, I have no evidence to back it up, is that he leaned on Kennedy to get him off the court. I don't know that he has that kind of ability with Alito and Thomas. They don't have relatives who've done favors for Donald Trump in the past. So we'll see.
No, I respect that.
Yeah,
exactly.
So we'll see. I think it's going to be up to them. Yeah, good talking to you, Tom. Thanks a lot. AJ in La Mesa, California. Hey, AJ, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. Hope all's well in the bunker.
So far, so good. The flames have not yet reached us.
Yeah, be sure to tell Kristi Noem hey for me when you trip over her.
Yeah, will do.
Listening to Congressman Smith earlier was like a bucket of ice-cold water on a blazingly hot summer's day. In my humble opinion, he'd make an outstanding spokesperson for the Democrats, if not a House leader.
Yeah.
He was not merely clear and concise and articulate, but he hit all the bullet points. He was spot on. He was, what he said was clear, concise,
and
simple.
he comes across authoritative. He's got a voice, a demeanor that would appeal to the authoritarians who want somebody to follow, and yet he's also a progressive. I mean, he just, he's like, he's not pounding his fist on the table, but he's damn close. He's just saying, this is the way it is. And
he's exceedingly smart, and he speaks well, and he speaks in real time. There's no It's right back at you.
Yeah.
And
keep an eye on this guy. He's going to go. He's going to go places.
Yes, keep it simple, stupid. And one of the cornerstones of pedagogy is repetition, repetition, repetition.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that the Democrats need to, get a clear, concise message that's easy to understand and memorable, and just hammer it home. And just when the crud comes from the other side, what I call the vast right-wing cesspool, just come back. Just the facts, ma'am. Again, clear, concise, easy to understand, and memorable. And he hit all those bullet points. And the quote I shared last week from President Eisenhower about the political party does not have as its foundation the determination to advance a cause that's right, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
It is merely a conspiracy to seize power.
Correct.
That would make an outstanding billboard.
Yeah. I'm with
Here's
you.
what a Republican once said, folks.
Yeah, I'm with you. AJ, I got to move along, but I agree with your analysis. Spot on as always. Thanks, AJ, for the call. Kathy in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Hey, Kathy, what's on your mind today?
Oh, everything. But here's why I called.
Okay.
The discharge petition.
Mm-hmm.
It has 4 Republicans. Lauren Boebert is the 4th.
Did she? I thought she backed off. She did not?
Still on
She's
it.
still on it? Oh, very cool.
I looked at it just minutes ago.
Okay.
In fact, I can get to it right this moment.
Well, thanks for the reminder, Kathy. She was not part of the original press conference, so maybe that's why it didn't stick in my brain. There's a lot going on right now.
Well, there's a lot of very strange things happening with respect affected us. She's still on it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the heads up. Thanks for the correction.
The other thing is, it looks like a district judge can swear in Adelita Grijalva.
Oh, interesting. So any Article 3 judge can do it?
Well, this is from Grok, so, take it that way. But it says, yes, a U.S. federal district or circuit court judge can administer the oath. What I'd like to see, honestly, is Sonia Sotomayor or Kagan or Brown Jackson administer the oath. I would just like that.
Yeah.
But Grok says the federal judge can swear in a member-elect if the state has certified the election. They don't have to do that till the 14th, if I remember correctly.
Right. My understanding is that the people in the state who certify the election are procrastinating right now.
I don't know. The Secretary of State there is a Democrat.
I know.
I don't know that they're procrastinating.
It's the local officials
my guess
because it's only in one congressional district.
Yeah, I know, but I think one of the things they want to do is get it precisely and exactly correct.
Yeah, that may be.
That
may be.
Yeah, they don't want anybody challenging it.
Yeah. Kathy, thanks for the call. And thanks for the information. I appreciate it. We're hitting the top of the hour here. On the other side of the break, Texas cops using 83,000 license plate reading cameras to find a woman who's getting an abortion? Really?
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Prison doesn't work and how we can do better by Maya Chenwar, who is or was, I believe she still is, the publisher or the editor rather over at truthout.org. This is from the introduction, the very beginning of the book. She uses a word I can't say on the air. I'll replace it with the word damn. Damn, 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 damn. I'm crying with my mother over the phone. It's late evening, December 25th, 2012, and Kayla, my only sister and best friend, has been arrested for the 7th time in the past 6 years. She's in jail again, and this time we're sort of hoping she'll stay there. If she asks, I tell Mom, I'm not bailing her out. Well, You know, we're not, Mom says, her voice low and far away, a weary echo of words uttered in months and years past. If she's in there, at least she'll be safe. Jail, we agree, may be the only place that can save Kayla's life, staving off her burning dependency on heroin. Neither of us acknowledges that regardless of whether Kayla stays clean while incarcerated, sooner or later she'll be getting out. Do we know what she's in for, I asked Mom. Does it matter? I think of Kayla cuffed and listless, being dragged through the doors of the Cook County Jail, catching the eyes of women she's known before in court, on the street, in juvenile detention, in jail, in prison. I wonder whether a part of her is relieved to be back. Later, when I pick up the phone and hear a robotic voice announce, "You have a collect call from the Cook County Jail, press 5 to take the call," I press the hang-up button and get into bed. My attitude toward Kayla's incarceration was born out of desperation. She'd overdosed 3 times within 2 months, passing out on the street, awakening in abandoned buildings or crowded hospitals, her pulse barely ticking. Yet my wish chafed against not only my love for her, but also my politics, my ideals, my sense of justice and truth. After all, I run a social justice-based news organization and have denounced the colossus that is the prison industrial complex for as long as I can remember. For nearly a decade, I've corresponded with a number of people in prison as both interviewees and pen pals, and I've learned much from them about the violence and hopelessness of our system. My understandings of the power structures that create prisons have been guided by the work of people like activist and scholar Angela Davis, a staunch prison abolitionist. How could I reconcile my wholehearted opposition to the prison industrial complex with a desire to see my own sister locked up? When I look back on that time, I can only comprehend it by acknowledging the insidious, persistent role that prison occupied in my mind. It was closely connected to the role it occupies in larger society. Incarceration serves as the default answer to many of the worst social problems plaguing this country. Not because it solves them, but because it buries them. By isolating and disappearing millions of Americans, more than 2.3 million right now, making us the most incarcerated country on the planet, prison conveniently disappears deeply rooted issues that society, or rather those with power in society, would rather not attend to. Prison, writes Angela Davis, performs a feat of magic. As massive numbers of homeless, hungry, unemployed, drug-addicted, illiterate, and mentally ill people vanish behind its walls, the social problems of extreme poverty, homelessness, hunger, unemployment, drug addiction, illiteracy, and mental illness become more ignorable, too. But, as Davis notes, prisons do not disappear problems, they disappear human beings. And the caging and erasure of those human beings, mostly people of color and poor people, perpetuates a cycle in which large groups of people are cut off from mainstream society and denied the freedoms, opportunities, civil dignity, and basic needs that allow them a good life. In many jails and prisons, incarcerated people are tossed into a dank, dungeon-like solitary confinement cell when they are determined to have misbehaved. It's dubbed the hole. Isolated and dark, it shuts out almost all communication with fellow prisoners in the outside. Guards control the terms of confinement and the channels, if any, by which words can travel in and out. The hole presents a stark symbol of the institution of prison in its entirety, which functions on the tenets of disappearance, isolationism, and disposability. The solution to our social problems, the mechanism that's supposed to keep things together, amounts to destruction, the disposal of vast numbers of human beings, the breaking down of families, and the shattering of communities. Prison is tearing society apart. This country's most marginalized communities bear the overwhelming brunt of that devastation, but ultimately we are all caught up in the destruction as the politics of isolation ruptures the human bonds that could otherwise hold together a safer, healthier, and more just society. The behemoth that encompasses the prison is called by many names. The most meaningful ones, I think, are those that convey the pervasiveness of its power, the way it infects the world outside as well as the people within. Scholar and activist Beth Ritchie uses the term prison nation, describing it as, quote, a broad notion of using the arm of the law to control people, especially people who are disadvantaged and come from disadvantaged communities, end quote. That control can take the form of prisons, jails, surveillance, policing, detention, probation, harsh restrictions on child guardianship, the militarization of schools, and other strategies of isolation and disposal, particularly deployed against poor communities of color, especially black communities. Others have used prison nation simply to demonstrate the system's vastness, how it infiltrates our culture and fuels our national politics, often in invisible ways. Prison industrial complex, PIC, is another key term, Rachel Herzing of the prison abolitionist group Critical Resistance defines it. And then she goes on through this. It's an extraordinary book. Locked Down, Locked Out by Maya Angelou.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We're to the third hour of our program. Just an interesting little bit here that's kind of flown under the national press's radar, but I want to put on yours. Trump originally tried to mobilize the Oregon National Guard to come in here and help ICE and, whatever, militarize the city and stop us from voting or whatever he's up to. The Brigadier General, his name is Alan R. Gronewald, of the Oregon National Guard, the senior-most officer, the guy who runs the Oregon National Guard full-time. This is his job. He's a general. He wears the whole general outfit. He's got the star on his shoulders, the whole bit. Testified before a Senate committee in the Oregon State Senate last week, and this is what he had to say. Let's try that again. I think we have to reset it.
To protect Oregonians. And so by serving in this mission, they will be protecting any protesters at the ICE facility. That's my desire. Now, to answer your question, full force is not a doctrinal term that the Army uses. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, and I don't want to speculate as to what level of force they will be allowed to use.
There you go.
Thank you very much, General. Thank you. And I would just like to request of each of you, and please pass this on to your colleagues.
He says, yeah, if we get called up, our job is to protect Oregonians. That's what the National Guard does in the state of Oregon, Army National Guard. So if we get called up, we will be protecting the protesters. Donald Trump has to be just hysterical. Meanwhile, Texas cops have used 83,000 cameras. This is, and they tried to hide it. They tried to cover it up. This is just nuts. This woman had an abortion. Her boyfriend found out about it, or perhaps it's her husband. They're separated. It's her partner. Yeah, it's not her husband. He found out about it. He threatened her at gunpoint. She called the police. He's being prosecuted for violence against his friend, his girlfriend. And he discovered that 2 weeks earlier she had had an abortion. So he hooks up with a Texas cop who apparently is also has a history of being abusive. And this is from Jessica Valenti and Kylie Chung's newsletter, jessica.substack.com. Abortion Every Day. Texas police, I'll just read it straight up because it's just mind-boggling. Texas police tried to track down an abortion patient using an automatic license plate reader, ALPR, accessing more than 83,000 cameras all across the United States. The Johnson County Sheriff's Office told reporters this was not a criminal investigation. Not a criminal investigation, but a missing persons case, claiming that the search was about her safety. And the company, there's this company that runs these 83,000 privatized license plate reading cameras all over the country. It's called Flock. And they said that the initial reporting that they were trying to track down this woman to prosecute her for having had an abortion was, quote, unequivocally false and clickbait-driven reporting. To no one's surprise, they were full of crap. New reporting from 404 Media and the Electronic Frontier Foundation confirms that police were trying to locate this woman with the goal of prosecuting her after having opened a death investigation into her abortion. When the journalists pointed this out, the police started trying to cover their tracks. Perhaps worst of all, this investigation was prompted by the woman's abusive partner, a man who threatened her at gunpoint before turning her into police over her abortion. Adam King is the Johnson County Sheriff, and he lied to the reporters. He said, apparently lied. He said her family was worried that she was going to bleed to death, and we were trying to find her to get her to a hospital. But an incident report and an affidavit shows the case was a death investigation for a non-viable fetus, and the abortion had taken place 2 weeks earlier. She was just fleeing an abusive boyfriend. King, the sheriff, who was trying to snatch her and who searched 83,000 cameras across the United States, claimed the woman, quote, was not under investigation at any point. But, Jessica Valenti reports, police collected evidence related to the woman's abortion, like text messages, photos, and the envelope that her abortion pills arrived in. They also went to the district attorney's office about prosecuting the woman. But when the news came out, the police tried to cover their tracks. Sheriff King told reporters, there's no big conspiracy there to be the abortion police. But after the story hit the press, his office retroactively created a supplemental report. Flock, the company that runs the cameras all over the country, they tried to PR their way out of this. Again, quoting Jessica Valenti, co-founder Garrett Langley slammed reporters in a blog post claiming that it was unequivocally false that this was a case about abortion. He later told Forbes that police searched for the woman because there was concern from a family member. The family member was the abusive boyfriend. Just last week, and Jessica notes, just last week, Pregnancy Justice reported that there have been over 400 pregnancy-related arrests since the Dobbs decision. Women who have either abortions or miscarriages are getting arrested in America, 400 of them so far. Pay attention. This is wild, wild stuff. Meanwhile, the recession may already be upon us. 21 states are already in recession. There's another 13 states that are wobbling. California is one of them. This is the result, by and large, of Donald Trump's tariffs and his increased tax cuts for billionaires and raising taxes on average working people. The average American family is going to spend about $2,600 a year more this year than they did last year, because so many goods are subject to Donald Trump's tariffs. Trump is out there bragging about, hey, we brought in $1 trillion. Actually, he's been saying, we brought in $14 trillion from these tariffs, which is a complete lie. There's nothing, not even close. You know, they brought in maybe $1 billion or $2 billion, but whatever. It's all come out of the pockets of you and me. American consumers and American companies pay the tariffs. He says, oh, we put a tariff on China. No, you didn't. You put a tariff on Americans who buy goods from China. Oh, we put a tariff on Europe. No, you didn't. You put a tariff on Americans and American companies who buy goods from Europe. Oh, we put a 50% tariff on India and Brazil because I don't like the way they're behaving. You didn't put a tariff on India and Brazil. You put a tariff on Americans and American companies who buy things from India and Brazil. Now, as you know, I am a fan of tariffs as part of a comprehensive industrial policy, a manufacturing policy for our country. But not this way. This guy he doesn't understand what he's doing. He doesn't understand basic economics. He's bumbling this thing terribly, and he's throwing the country into a recession. Meanwhile, his popularity is absolutely in the crapper. It's down into the 30s. Americans are sick and tired of it. They don't like the goons, the thugs in our streets. They don't like their tax dollars being used to build more private prisons that are enriching Republican donors. And they don't like these high prices. They're exploding. Beef, eggs, everything.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Now, how the shutdown may get canceled and how Portland is responding to the... This is hysterical. Responding to ICE. I'll tell you about that right after this. And welcome back. Alfredo in Mountain View, California. Hey, Alfredo, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, thank you for taking my call. I have a name for the Trump's bill. I call it the Billionaires Bad for America bill.
Nice BBB. There you go.
Yeah. But anyway, my call is regarding Bondi testifying yesterday in front of the Judiciary Committee.
All right.
I have never seen such a display of arrogance. This woman, such contempt against, government officials.
Yeah.
It was jaw-dropping. I could not believe my ears. Yeah. And what it was even worse than that is that the Republicans in that committee were defending Epstein. It was just absolutely jaw-dropping. I could not believe my ears, but that's my comment.
Well, there's a cover-up going on. You know, it's becoming increasingly clear that Jeffrey Epstein had photographs or video or some kind of evidence that Donald Trump was committing sexual crimes. Trump would not be covering this up if that wasn't there. I mean, he's just not that stupid.
I have no doubt. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, thank you,
and she's
Tom.
part of the cover-up. Everybody who works for him is part of the Cash Patel. Oh, yeah, there's no evidence Jeffrey Epstein ever trafficked anybody to anybody other than himself. Give me a break.
The committee, but the Republicans, spineless cowards,
yes,
to side with her and to defend Epstein. It's just unbelievable to me. But anyway, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Alfredo. Nice to hear from you. Appreciate it. Gary in Monroe, Georgia. Hey, Gary, greed has no heart. What's up?
Thank you. Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm well, knock wood.
Sure.
What's on your mind today?
Well, one of your strong suits is something I believe in. After talking to me after all these years, you know I believe in humility, right? Mm-hmm. And you have it.
Well, if I owned up to it, that would contradict that assertion. So
I know, but I've often
I'm very humble. I'm so proud of it.
I know, but let me share this with you. I've often wondered how hard it is. People that are on TV and have programs, it's not an easy thing to do.
I know.
That's okay.
I know. I've been doing it for 23 years, and it
really,
the first couple of years were
I knew that
were pretty weird. I'm just kind of bumbling around learning how to do this, but I think I've figured it out.
I hear more humility.
Yeah.
I hear humility.
Okay.
Okay. So what I called about was this. It's ironic. It just seems what you're talking about was what's on my mind. Mm-hmm. A new level of violence in our country. Mm-hmm. Why? Too much of America, not all of America, is out of control. Mm-hmm. I mean, what goes around will come around to the Republicans and the liar in chief. What goes around will eventually come around.
Yeah.
This bully type of philosophy. They got a bully philosophy of governing. Mm-hmm. Just bully people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're just going to have to be tough and get tougher and verbally punch them.
Yeah.
Verbally.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Gary, and that's starting to happen. And J.B. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom seem to be leading the charge, although you got some really good Democrats in the House and Senate who are out there. Adam Schiff and some of these folks, Eric Swalwell.
I'm praying.
Me too, actually, for my country. Thank you, Gary. I'll be right back. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. I remember my dad's Republican Party, the Republican Party of Dwight Eisenhower. Dwight Eisenhower, who ran on advocacy for democracy around the world, for a clean environment, for honest wages, for unions, for building infrastructure, for government balanced spending, for peace in the world. This is from his 1956 campaign.
Eisenhower knows how to deal with the Russians. He has met Europe's leaders, has got them working with us. Elect the number one man for the number one job of our time. November 4th, vote for peace. Vote for Eisenhower. A paid film.
Right. Vote for peace. That was it. And now the Republicans are the party of, military boondoggles and corruption and hate and anti-union and everything, the opposite of everything Eisenhower stood for. Will the Republican Party survive this? What are they going to come back as? There's a whole op-ed about this titled Goodbye Liz Cheney over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
I remember when the truth still meant a person's word held weight. Goldwater stood on principles even when the stakes were great. But now the truth's been buried under shadows cold and sly. A party lost its compass to the needle of the lie. The GOP's addiction to the lie, selling poison to the people while the truth just walks on by. What once was conviction has withered and died. All that's left is the fire hose, the GOP's addiction to the lie.
21 minutes past the hour. So Robert Reich pointed this out a couple days ago. I was unaware of this. I didn't realize that the last shutdown, which lasted 35 days in 2019, Donald Trump actually wanted that shutdown. It was his shutdown. He was trying to force the Democrats to go along with providing funding for the border wall down on Mexico, in Mexico. He ultimately, when the shutdown didn't work, ultimately just basically took money out of the Defense Department. He took money away from upgrading military housing, the houses where the GIs live. A lot of them, were rotting, or they had rats, or they had, whatever. And there was a major project to upgrade military housing around the country, and he took that money and used it to build his wall because he couldn't do the shutdown. Well, how did the shutdown end? It ended when the air traffic controllers stopped showing up for work after a month. They just said, okay, that's it. We've lost 2 paychecks now. We're not gonna miss any more. You're gonna put us back to work. You're gonna start paying us again. So now we've got yesterday over 6,000 air traffic delays. The Hollywood Burbank Airport in California not staffed by air traffic control. And Jimmy Kimmel, in fact, making jokes about it last night. The Newark, Phoenix, and Denver airports all experiencing problems. And now Trump is talking about not even giving back pay to the air traffic controllers and TSA people because he's pissed off at federal workers in general because, hey, they're federal workers. Wild stuff. Meanwhile, here in Portland, this is crazy. Stephen Miller tweets, "It's a war zone." And Portland responds, "No, it's a party. You didn't recognize it because you've never been invited to one. What is it? We have furries dancing on the street in Portland." I mean, people in furry costumes, in big animal costumes, out in front of the ICE building, or next door to it, actually, because the front of it has been blocked off by the Portland Police Department because they don't want, confrontation. And so we're having a block party. If you're watching us on TV, Nate is playing it right now on, over my shoulder. The video of it. And Courtney Vaughn on Blue Sky, COURTNEYVAUGHN.bluesky.social, has the video over on Blue Sky, and it's hysterical. And then Stephen Miller comes out and says it's a war zone. And no, the people in Portland are like, no, it's dream on, buddy. Meanwhile, hundreds of Texas National Guard soldiers are being gathered in a federal facility outside of Chicago. We had a federal judge here in Oregon, who was appointed by Donald Trump, said, no, there is no emergency in Portland. Furries are not an emergency, Donald. Seriously. And no, there's not litter boxes in our schools either. It's just, this is crazy. But anyhow, furries are not an emergency. You don't have to send in the troops. But the judge in Chicago, in Illinois, said, you don't have to send in the troops, but I'm going to let you do it until this thing goes to the appeals court next week. So Trump is moving the Texas National Guard up to Illinois. Why? Because he wants people from a different state to be turning their guns on the people in Illinois. They will be coming in, a lot of these, probably the vast majority of these young men in the Texas National Guard have never been outside of Texas, or certainly have not been to Illinois or Chicago, and they're thinking of Chicago the way that it's portrayed on Fox so-called news. which is, you know, it's a war zone, it's lawless. I mean, maybe they've been watching Chicago PD, you know, the old episodes, which, by the way, it's a great show. Louise, I binge watched it. You know, the old episodes where the cops are beating up people and all, you know, it's just the rough streets of Chicago. But even that, you know, doesn't, you know, it still portrays Chicago as a really nice place. It's just got some bad characters. But anyhow, this is sad. So the federal judge is letting it happen in Chicago, and we'll see. How is Governor Pritzker going to respond to this? How is the mayor of Chicago going to respond to this? How are the Chicago police going to respond to this? Will Governor Pritzker mobilize the Illinois National Guard? And will the commander of the Illinois National Guard say the same thing you heard on this program? The commander, the Brigadier General Commander of the Oregon National Guard say, well, my job is to protect Oregonians. I will defend the protesters, not ICE. Would the Illinois National Guard Brigadier General, who runs their Army National Guard, say the same thing? I don't know. Be interesting to ask him that question. But furries? Oh my God, there's furries! Stephen Miller is just getting, well, he's a little, since he's lost his fur on the top, I guess maybe that's it. What do you think?
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I will get your thoughts after the break. We'll pick up your calls. Stay with us. Hartmann Book Club is Homewreckers by Aaron Glantz, a Pulitzer Prize finalist. The subtitle is How a Gang of Wall Street Kingpins, Hedge Fund Magnates, Crooked Banks, and Venture Capitalists suckered millions out of their homes and demolished the American dream. It's quite a subtitle. This is from chapter 21, titled Triumph of the Homewreckers. Donald Trump took the oath of office on a chilly Friday morning, delivering an inaugural address that promised an end to the corruption and impotence that had widened America's historic wealth gap. He understood that his victory had been propelled by harnessing the public's rage and envy at having been left behind in the economic recovery, and that he promised that he would not forget it. Evoking FDR's famous Forgotten Man speech from 1932 that promised to prioritize the needs of, quote, the man at the bottom of the economic pyramid, Trump declared, quote, the forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. Politicians had prospered, he said, but jobs had evaporated, factories closed. Quote, the establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little chance to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. This all changes, starting right here and right now, Trump proclaimed, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you. This is your day. This is your celebration. End of quote. The moment, however, belonged not to the great mass of struggling Americans, but to the new president's most ardent supporters, flamboyant businessmen who profited off the pain of the housing bust and were now poised to steer the ship of state for at least the next 4 years. As Trump reached out his hand and swore to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, his close friend and inaugural committee chair, Tom Barrack, stood behind him, smiling in a blue scarf and black overcoat. Afterward, Barrack and Trump embraced at the U.S. Capitol's inaugural platform. The homewreckers had arrived. Barrack didn't take an official position in the Trump administration, reportedly turning down an offer to be White House Chief of Staff, Treasury Secretary, or Ambassador to Mexico. Roger Stone told me he could have had any position he wanted, but working for the government would have meant making a lot less money. I don't think he has the belly for public service, Stone observed. Other homewreckers had no such qualms. If they changed the rules of the game now, they could make more money later. Steve Mnuchin, by now dubbed the foreclosure king by his critics, was confirmed as Treasury Secretary. His top deputy at One West, the bank, Joseph Otting, became the nation's chief bank regulator, the comptroller of the currency. Wilbur Ross, the bankruptcy tycoon who bought Florida's Bank United, became the Commerce Secretary, charged with everything from negotiating trade deals to overseeing the U.S. Census. Steve Schwartzman, the chairman of Blackstone, became chair of the White House's Strategic and Policy Forum, a group of business leaders who were to meet regularly with Trump. Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Chase was named vice chair. Though the group disbanded over the summer after Trump's statement that bigotry and violence on many sides were responsible for a white nationalist killing a counter-protester in Charlottesville, Virginia, Schwartzman, along with Barack, is said to be among a small group of outsiders, including Sean Hannity, who are put directly through to the president rather than being routed through the normal communications channels. Hannity reportedly chats with Trump nightly. Schwartzman has flown on Air Force One. On February 12, 2017, less than a month into Trump's presidency, while the commander-in-chief was dining with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan at his Mar-a-Lago golf club, Schwartzman threw a massive 70th birthday bash at his Four Winds estate, barely a mile and a half away. This time, neither Donald nor Melania Trump could make it, but daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner did, along with Mnuchin, Ross, and a who's who of high finance and culture, from Henry Kravis, co-founder of the hostile takeover firm Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, to the fashion designer Donatella Versace. The party featured live camels, trapeze artists, fireworks, and a gondolier. Schwartzman's tennis courts were covered with Asian-themed staging. The man who'd hired Patti LaBelle to sing Happy Birthday for his 60th was serenaded by Gwen Stefani on his 70th. After Happy Birthday, the peroxide pop star took a, quote, a quick twirl with the birthday boy around a dance floor constructed inside a two-story tent where acrobats shimmied and jumped, the New York Times reported. Unlike a decade before, when Schwartzman's glorious pre-bust bash sparked condemnation from sources as conservative as the Wall Street Journal, this time the festivities sparked very little blowback. In her story, Bloomberg reporter Amanda Gordon reveled in the comparison with Schwartzman's 60th. There were some differences, though, she wrote. Remember that beautiful fur coat on Melania Trump? It was New York in February on a weeknight. This time, no bundling required, with many folks golfing and swimming all day before a balmy night and fireworks alongside a full moon. Howard Marks, the co-chairman of Oak Tree Capital, a vulture firm that had bought and flipped 3,000 foreclosures, told Gordon, quote, "The world is an uncertain place. A lot of people are unhappy with a lot of other people. There are a lot of things that people are upset about. So it's nice to have an evening where everybody's happy, harmonious, and upbeat." End quote. There was a lot of celebrating to be had. In June, the gang got together for the marriage of Steve Mnuchin and his third wife, actress Louise Linton, almost 2 decades younger than him. And then it continues from there. The book is Homewreckers by Aaron Glantz.
Help support Progressive Radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio and tag you're it. America is suffering from an epidemic of bullying. And one of the things we know is that culture, including bullying, flows from the top down. We've seen studies where when issues of for example, being gay or transgender are being debated in the public, gay and transgender kids in school are more likely to be bullied. When racial issues are being discussed, people of minority races are more likely to be bullied. Well, now we've got a man who has literally built his career on being a bully, Donald Trump, as president, or was president, as candidate. And he is driving this insane bullying campaign and using it as a political weapon across the United States. And it's contagious. It's dangerous. There's an entire article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled "America's New Epidemic, a Nation Overrun by Bullies." Check it out.
Don't say the GOP ain't working hard. They've got their eyes on your schoolyard. Forget about wages or Medicare. There's a kid in a tail, and that just ain't fair. While while billionaires are skipping tax. And bridges crumble, roads collapse. Stan Gerd stands proud and bold to fight the menace, 12 years old. The furry crisis, sound the alarm. A kid just barked, bring in the National Guard. I fix the grid or raise the wage when a child mowed out on a classroom stage. This is war, this is real. Send them all to juvie or a Texas jail. Truth, justice, and the American way. No fur allowed in the Lone Star State.
So we've got a furry invasion here in Portland. Oh my God, the furries showed up at ICE. In fact, yesterday, Kristi Noem was here in town. You will recall, those of you who listened to the program yesterday, around this time of day, in the third hour of the show, I was saying to my Portland, listeners, we're on the air here on X-Ray FM, which is the local FM station that carries our show. I was saying, don't go to ICE. Just stay away. What's the old song from the 60s? Remember that from, I think it was like 1967, something like that. What if they gave a war and no one came? Well, that's what Kristi Noem tried to do. She tried to come here and start a war. And she thought that coming to Portland with her boyfriend, Corey Lewandowski, would, create enough of a furor among the anarchists and the communists and the radical left here in Portland that we would all show up and firebomb ICE or something. No. So the video that was on the news last night, there were two clips. One clip, which was the Fox clip. They snatched some Mexican guy driving a car, right? And he didn't speak English. And so Kristi Noem is interrogating him through an ICE guy who speaks Spanish through a translator. And he's like, well, yeah, I guess I am a sex offender. Yeah, I've been back to Mexico 5 times. They keep deporting me. I keep coming. So she got her clip for Fox News. It wasn't really the clip she wanted, though, because I think what she wanted was a building on fire or something, But anyhow, the clip that we saw here in Portland, the one that, the Portland stations played, was she's standing up on top of the ICE building, looking down at the crowd in front of the ICE building here in Portland. It was 8 people, and one of them was wearing a chicken costume. And she's standing up there with her boyfriend, Corey Lewandowski, and looking at this going, huh? This is what I spent $1 million flying out here to Portland to have a press conference and there's 8 people and one of them's in a chicken costume? And then last night, just a see you later, Kristi, the furries showed up. Like a dozen of them. People in these, animal costumes. Welcome to Portland. The unofficial slogan for our city, maybe it's official, I don't know, is keep Portland weird. And it is true. If you've ever seen the show Portlandia, it's not a comedy, it's a documentary. All right, so what's on your mind? Sean in Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. Hey, Sean, what's up?
Hey, Tom, let me get you off speaker. Yeah, you were just talking about what I had wanted to bring up. My son sent me the video last night because he lives in Portland of the Kristi Noem on top of the ICE building, and the thing that makes me upset. Well, I was happy that hardly anybody showed up.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes me upset is that she said that the people in Portland are uneducated and ill-informed.
I think we have probably one of the highest college graduate, of any city our size. We're only about 1 million people. I'm sure Cambridge beats us out in Massachusetts, but we've got several colleges here. And and we've got one of the world's best medical schools, Oregon Health and Science University, OHSU, where one of my kids works. I mean, this is just a great place.
Well, and he loves it there. Mm-hmm. But the deal, I mean, it just made me angry because she she's a piece of work,
Yeah.
as I told Mateo.
Yeah.
And for her to talk about my son, you and Louise, everybody in Portland that way, she's got no clue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Clearly.
so,
Or she's lying through her teeth. I believe it's the latter. I don't think she's that stupid. Trump
yeah,
might be
I
that
know.
stupid,
Isn't
but I
that
don't think
sad?
Kristi Noem is.
Yeah, well, it just made me angry, so that's why I wanted to give you a call.
Yeah.
And because, my son's thinking about leaving the country.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, and that makes me sad.
Mm-hmm.
And because
Well, tell him not to give up. Tell him I said hi.
Oh,
Portland's
no.
a great town. If he's here, he's
Oh.
safe. This is a safe
yeah,
town.
he's been there for 2.5 years, and he loves it. He is so involved with so many things there,
Yeah.
environmentally and so forth.
The biggest problem we
Some of
have
the
is there's
hike-
too many places selling, fancy custom lattes. They're driving the prices down.
I know, but he loves his coffee.
Oh, it's everywhere. I mean, it's like, Portland and Seattle are literally world famous for all the coffee joints we've got. And Portland also, I don't know if this is true post-COVID, but pre-COVID, we're the only city in the world with more strip joints than churches. That appears to have flipped out your phone, Sean. Sean, anyhow, I got to move along. I got to run. Thank you for the call. June in Seattle. Hey, June, what's on your mind today?
Good afternoon, Tom. I'm a first-time caller and a supporter of the radio station here, KBCS.
Great.
I wanted to thank you because you're a hardworking person, you're intelligent, and I appreciate your history. I'm not going to talk on and on, but I do want to mention that Adam Smith is running for Congress in Seattle, and opposing him is Kshama Sawant, and she is a working candidate. She served 10 years in Seattle in the
I'm
city
familiar
council.
with her. She's been on the program a couple of times. She's a good, solid
great.
progressive. Hey,
It's working party candidate.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting primary.
Can I just say a few more things? So she led a fight to win the nation's current highest minimum wage at $20.76. She won the Amazon tax, where hundreds of millions of annually went for affordable housing. She also won a historic measure for renters' rights, for example, a $10 cap on late rent fees, a ban on winter evictions, and a 6-month notice for rent increases. Okay, briefly, one more thing. Adam Smith has received nearly $1 million from the health industry. He voted to establish ICE and sent billions to fund the genocide in Gaza. His biggest donor last year is pro-genocidal AIPAC. So, Tom, would you please invite Kshama Sawant on your show to speak
No,
again?
I'm not going to get into the middle of a primary fight. And he came out today and took a very anti-AIPAC position, saying we need to cut off funding to Israel. So we'll see. But June, thanks for the call. And that's going to be a hell of a primary. I don't even want to speculate on where it's going to go because it's not my district. 44 and a half minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls right after this sticker.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Fair and only slightly unbalanced. I'll be right back with you. And welcome back. Mary in Greenwood Village, Colorado. Hey, Mary, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I'm a long-time listener and first-time caller, so
Well,
thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I need to vent. I'm very frustrated that the Democrats don't use the strong available resources that could really rid our country of the current regime. For example, we need strong leadership to consolidate the millions of people laid off, including the FBI, the CIA, and the generals and the federal employees, with those agencies that support protests, such as Indivisible, 501, and the ACLU, and more. If we all consolidated, if we had the right, strong leadership, there would be millions upon millions upon millions of us overthrowing this regime. Look what it did for Kilmer. And it wasn't millions upon millions.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that. That's why yesterday, I believe it was, maybe the day before, I said that if we don't generate a level of outrage around that assault on that apartment building in Chicago that is at the level that put Jimmy Kimmel back on the air on what network was he on? ABC? Yeah. Then we're in deep trouble. We really need to be doing that. So thank you, Mary. Well said. Thank you very much. Joe in Nutley, New Jersey. Hey, Joe, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Good to speak to you again. I know you're not a big Bill Clinton fan, and I largely agree with many of your points. But
I don't dislike Bill Clinton. I think, in many ways he was a very good president given the times. But
understood. And I agree. I'm not disputing that. I'm saying that he did some good and some things I didn't agree with either.
Yeah.
But Obama's presidency, it just set the rate. There was a black guy in the White House that wasn't carrying a tray, and it just set these racists off. And you get these morons from Texas and Wisconsin and all the people that call you that, and all of the good things he did, and he did a lot of good things, were reversed by the orange turd.
Yeah.
And it's just set these people off, and it also activated the racism that exists in many people that aren't, like you said, 2/3 of white people are racist. Well, I don't know if it's 2/3, but there is racism in many of the people that are not maggots.
Yeah.
And it activated that, and it hit them in where they lived. And it's sort of like, I can say, I like the guy. I voted for him twice. I would never vote for a Republican ever again. But I just don't know if it was worth it, especially at this time in our history.
Well, looking back on it, I agree with your analysis that when the GOP went genuinely bat guano crazy was when the black guy got elected. And, immediately you had the Tea Party, and it was funded by the Koch brothers. And keep in mind, their father, Fred, was the guy who funded the John Birch Society in the 1950s in response to the Brown versus Board of Education decision, when black children could sit with white children in the schools. So, history is echoing here. So in retrospect, we can say, that happened. But, hey, progress always produces reaction. It doesn't mean that Obama should not have been president. And it doesn't mean he didn't do a lot of good stuff. I would have liked to have seen him be a whole lot more progressive, but I thought he on balance, he did a pretty good job. Joe, thanks for the call. I get your point. It's 49 minutes past the hour. Back with you in just a minute. Stay with us.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us.
Welcome back. 49 minutes past the hour. Picking up the calls here. Matt in Chicago. Hey, Matt, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Just a couple of points of disagreement. One, I don't think that Donald Trump needs a plan B with regards to air traffic controllers. I mean, in my opinion, he's doing his job of destroying the economy on behalf of Putin.
Well, that could be. I mean, they did back him down, though, in 2019.
Well, he's got different vigor now. And then the other thing, while we're on the subject of puppets, I do think that he pressured Kennedy to resign or retire, but I think the Federalist Society is the one pulling the strings on Supreme Court justices, and so it wouldn't surprise me at all if Alito Thomas resign so that he could actually appoint the next two.
It's a possibility. I don't think it's the Federalist Society as much as it is Leonard Leo. He's got $1.5 billion now. He is now the force in that arena.
Yeah, you may be right.
And I don't have any idea what his opinion on this is, but if I was him, I would be saying, these guys are in their 70s, and we've got a Republican in the White House. Let's move them out and let's get some people in their 30s in here who are just, the Russell vote types. Although Russell's, I think, in his 50s, but you get my point. That kind of that perspective. Yeah. I'm not arguing with you, Matt.
All right, so we agree to agree.
Okay, Matt, thanks a lot for the call. Good talking to you. Joe in Chicago. Hey, Joe, what's on your mind today?
Well, it's been ongoing for about 2 months.
Joe, I'm having a hard time hearing you. You need to get your mouth next to your microphone. You can keep the phone on speaker, but just put it right up to your mouth.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Just the last 2 months has made me absolutely nauseous and sick with my head exploding, watching the Democrats with this great big zeal trying to get the Epstein files released, when that should have been done long before the election. As soon as Trump announced he was running indefinitely, when the Supreme Court came out with the immunity ruling, the Democrats should have broke down Biden's doors, insisted he fire Garland, and put somebody in that would have released that file, the unredacted Mueller report, and any other investigative reports showing...
No, I get all that, Joe, and if we all had time machines, wouldn't it be great? By the way, it's not making you nauseous, I'm guessing, because nauseous means sickening to look at. I think you mean nauseated, which is sick to your stomach, right?
That would be a better word.
Yeah, sorry. I forgive me for being the word police here, but that's one of my bugaboos.
But it's just that energy should have been done, and it was clear, and they didn't do it. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, Schumer shutting the government down now, great, but he's lost so much more trust and confidence.
But Schumer didn't shut the government down. John Thune did.
6 months ago. What's that?
Schumer didn't shut the government down. John Thune did. John Thune could pass a resolution with 50 votes today to open the government again. All he'd have to do is say, we're making a one-time exception to the filibuster for this continuing resolution. They do it routinely for federal judges. They do it routinely for Trump appointees. The Democrats tried to do it for the For the People Act, and they weren't successful because Manchin and Sinema stabbed us in the back. But it only takes 50 votes to reopen the government in the Senate. That's all it takes. All this 60-vote stuff, this is all theater.
I understand that, but he didn't make that move in March when the majority of people in elected office want him to do that.
I know.
And you lose confidence. You don't get it back that easily.
Yeah. Well, I think the Democrats are standing. By the way, MSNBC is reporting that air traffic controllers TSA employees start at $34,000 a year. These people cannot, $34,000 a year, you cannot afford to miss a paycheck. That's crazy. Joe, thanks for the call. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Tom, there's another side story to Trump's shutdown in 2018, 2019 that he caused for 35 days.
Right.
Right
after Christmas, in fact.
Right. And almost through January, 35 days. The Democrats won the election in 2018, won the House back. And remember, the Republicans had not even allocated money for the wall either. So he was preemptively shutting the government down to threaten the Democrats that he won't open it up until they provide money for the wall. They want the Democrats to do it, even though the Republicans didn't. Well, remember the year before, 2017, that Trump signed the big tax cut, and he had to do it right around Christmas time, so it applied to the 2018 tax year. You recall?
Yep, I do.
Okay. So then right away, they were showing Fox and News, and they were showing people saying, "Oh, I'm having so much. I'm already seeing more money in my paycheck. Thank you, President Trump." And I started thinking, well, how could that be? You wouldn't know your tax, how much you got back.
They actually changed the withholding schedule, didn't they?
That's exactly right. So they changed the withholding table and withheld less, but in some cases, much too...
right. People ended up with big tax bills at the end of the year because Trump had messed with the withholding table so that he could get a good story on Fox News.
Right. And then he said, oh, well, that wasn't anybody's fault. So he said, if you pay your taxes by January 15th, which I don't know how you do that. You wouldn't even have any of your taxes. If you pay your taxes by January 15th of 2019, you won't be subject to the penalty.
Right.
But he shut down the government, and the IRS was closed. So it
you
didn't
couldn't
matter.
pay your
People
taxes.
ended up having to pay the penalty anyway.
And
they didn't realize their tax cut. Because
And here's the
paid
problem
back
with this, Paul. That is a sufficiently complex story that 99% of Americans will never understand it. I mean, it'll never be told, first of all. I mean, you did a great job, right here on this program. But generally speaking, an awful lot of the really awful stuff that Trump does, he does in those areas where there's enough complexity or ambiguity that it can't be turned into a bumper sticker or a campaign slogan, but it does real damage.
And enough people that actually whatever they would have gotten in a tax cut actually ended up having paid back in the fine.
Mm-hmm.
They can tell their friends maybe, but that doesn't get out in the public enough. They tell their friends and family.
And the media never picked
really
it up.
Not enough.
I recall reading about it in The Guardian, if I'm remembering right. I mean, it's been a few years, but yeah.
Well, and that tax cut, by the way, I went to a luncheon with a tax attorney luncheon, and there were so many. It was like reading a crossword puzzle that says, C1 across and one across says C1 down. You can't get
it was
anywhere.
full of loopholes. Paul, I got to run. I'm sorry. Thanks for the call. And thanks for being with us today. Don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag. October 18 is coming up soon. Get ready. Have a great afternoon. I'll catch up with you tomorrow. Stay safe. Be good to yourself and the people around you.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.